Uh, all right. So for those of you that are tuning in because you love David, I'm the square-headed stepchild of the internet. Anything that we discuss here is like totally our opinion, man. And we're just guys from the internet with muscles. So if you want to know whether you should do it or not, ask your mom. Ask someone with letters after the name. We're just going to tell you what we do. Um, oh wait. I'll just give a quick introduction to Dave for those that don't know him. David's a Chow Gar guy, Mace guy. Been doing martial arts his entire life, and also the world's expert on rattan ring training for solo work and stuff like that. So we'll go through and get at it. David, how did we get here?
Well, first of all, I just want to thank you for inviting me, chat Ace. It's been great getting to know you and just kind of talking shop back and forth over these last few months. I love it when I run into other people that have that kind of like creative spark with their martial arts, that they kind of like start digging into, how to create more ways to train on your own, how to improve things, how to improve on previous designs of like solo training equipment, things like that. So that's been really great getting to know you and being able to talk about that type of stuff because, after you do martial arts for long enough, those creative juices get flowing and you're like, okay, well, maybe I could do it this way, or maybe I could build it that way, or, and kind of like breaking down some of the barriers that maybe some of us have in our minds about what type of tools we should use when we're solo training. And, I'm from a traditional art, so why should I use a heavy bag? Or I'm a sport fighter, why should I use a mukienjo? Why should I use an emperor ring? Things like that. So it's been good kind of connecting with other people who have that same type of spark where you look at the world and you look at the training and you go, I can improve on this. Like I can make things differently in a way that I know that I can get more benefit from. So that's kind of how we got here, man. Just talking shop and kind of recognizing that spark, that creative line.
Yeah, it's always cool to find somebody that's an innovator. I wouldn't really say that I invented anything, just more rediscovering and reframing, repackaging. And it sounds like that's what you.
I would say almost the same. I would say the same. Yeah, I haven't really created much, but I've definitely stood on the shoulders of people who did great work beforehand.
Well, those that have walked before, right? Mm-hmm. So for your martial arts background, it's some of that Kung Fu Do or
Yeah. So like when I was a kid, back in the 80s, like my parents got me into Taekwondo at the YMCA, and that was kind of my first brush with group class martial arts. And I kind of did that off and on for a number of years, did a handful of tournaments. And then I kind of so I wrote a book on Southern Praying Mantis, which is the main style that I teach and have been studying most of my life. I wrote kind of like a fundamentals book so that I can kind of help get people inspired by the art. And I tell a story in there where.
Sorry to interrupt you. Where do you find that? That's Kindle. That's Amazon. That's
you can get it anywhere. Yeah, you can get it at Barnes and Noble. You can get it on Amazon. Southern Praying Mantis Fundamentals. And it kind of, there's only one book, but I made 3 videos. It's probably 10, 15 years ago, and just to kind of like demonstrate the art. And I wrote a book to kind of go along with the first video. I never actually wrote books for the second and third video. So, what happened was I was I think I was a freshman in high school. I was 14, and a buddy of mine, actually, he wasn't a friend at the time. We were in this kind of cross-cultural club that met at school, and he was like, I do martial arts, you do martial arts. We're going to do this big kind of like event. And he asked me to demo with him. And so I was like, all right. He's like, well, why don't you come to my house and we'll come up with some sort of demonstration. And I'll demonstrate Kung Fu and you can demonstrate Taekwondo. And I was like, all right. So I show up at his house, got my nice white gi on, and he kind of comes out and he's kind of like Kung Fu looking pants, Kung Fu shoes, and a wife beater. And I mean, he was probably only 14 too, but the guy was twice my size. And so we started playing around, and it became super obvious kind of instantly the level of training that I had experienced and the level of training he had experienced. And
And he was
what was again?
he was Calgar, he was Mantis.
Yeah, he was Southern Praying Mantis because he wasn't Chowgar family. He was a different family, but the same root. And so anyway, it became super clear that whatever he had learned was extremely potent, and whatever I had learned wasn't. And not to say that there's not potency in Taekwondo. There was, but I was really young, and you don't teach like hard hitting type stuff to little kids. So he, on the other hand, had a different type of teacher that they kind of laid hands on each other in I would say, an effective way, and in a way of training that I was not comfortable with. We kept, we'd stop and punch towards the face. There was no real contact that way. Body shots were more like tagging and not like hitting. And I touched hands with this guy, and he just walloped me. And it turns out that he had only been training for like 6 months, and I had been training Taekwondo for years. And so I dropped my belt in that moment. I was like, okay, whatever it is that you're doing, I want to do that. And so that was kind of like the beginning of my journey of Southern Praying Mantis when I was 14. So that's 1991 when I started. And kind of from there, I moved from a handful of, like, I studied as anything I could when it came to Southern Praying Mantis. So the Chuka was the first family that I studied. I had a great opportunity to study with some Juklum or bamboo forest family, Mantis people after that. And then eventually came to studying Chowgar under Master Paul Whitrod. And that's kind of where I'm at today.
So how many different flavors of Mantis are there, right?
I mean, they'll tell you that there's like 3 main families, but there's the Chu, the Chowgar, and the Juklum. But or Iron Ox is also another system of Southern Praying Mantis. As time has gone on, it's kind of gotten bigger. As the internet has gotten bigger, we're seeing a lot more like smaller communities within like Malaysia, different places in Hong Kong. I even want to say Indonesia had some spots where you started seeing videos coming out of people who had trained and were loosely connected to the families, but were more of like a village style or a family style. So I think it's bigger than kind of like the 3 main families, but those are the kind of like big representative names: the Chu, the Chow, and the Juklum. And I would say I have to throw Iron Ox in there, the 4th. I mean, they're pretty big down.
So are all of the Mantis styles, are they all a compressed style? Are they all existing that same, Haka, Wing Chun type of in tight?
Yep.
Or is there a long fist style as well?
Well, yeah, I wouldn't say they're definitely more on the close quarters range. And kind of depending on the teacher and depending on that teacher's giftings and that teacher's kind of like specializations, they kind of bring their own spin to the art. So there's definitely been people I've trained with that fought much closer, and others that were that used a little bit more range. But for the most part, it's an infighting system. When I was a kid, we used to say that you could, if you're doing Mantis, you could fight your way out of a phone booth. But most people probably don't even know what that is anymore.
And how is it that we see Mantis? Sorry, so in general, what are the characteristics of Mantis where you look at it and you're like, that's Mantis? It doesn't. You don't know what it is, but that is Mantis.
Yeah, definitely. Like, first of all, starting with the stance, the posture it's a forward-facing kind of posture as far as like the way you set up. It's very meant to be economical in the sense that like you have one lead leg forward, and then you kind of sink your body down, and then you bring your elbows in front, and you bring your hands up. And so, like the traditional on guard was when your hands come out like this, and we call it the beggar's hand. Not that different from Wing Chun's asking hand, which is a single asking hand, and Mantis has the double. Albeit not not a lot of people will hold on guard like that now. There's a lot more modifications going on because you kind of, you stand in front of somebody and you open your arms up really wide. It's either a dead giveaway or they're going to ask you what the heck you're doing. So, but the traditional on guard was that double tan cue with opening the inside. And the idea was to invite the person into the center line. Come on in, welcoming the person into the center line so that you can trap and control and strike and grapple. So when it comes to Mantis, it's definitely very much close, facing the person, never sideways. We do fight at angles, obviously. Any good art will do that. But it really is the trapping, seizing, and striking that really makes Mantis unique. And one of the main ways that we hit is we hit with the Phoenix Fist. And so what I love about traditional arts is that you have a complexity of ways of hitting people. And so you've got obviously closed fists, you've got things like leopard punch, monkey or dragon, depending on what you call it, Phoenix Fist, like knife hands, all kinds of grabbing, clawing. And that's because you're using bare knuckle and you don't have boxing gloves on, you don't have MMA gloves on, you can't do a lot of things that you have the options to with open hand. So, hitting somebody with the chop, or slapping or gouging or clawing, these are all the things that you get to do in traditional arts that you really can't do in sport fighting. So it kind of gives you a lot more options when you're training. And Mantis has a lot of those, kind of like a different type of hand strikes that you can use in different parts of the body. And the idea is that you're actually trying to hit specific parts of the body with that different shape of the fist to do more damage. So like the Phoenix Fist specifically is supposed to hit at vital points of the body. So soft points or points that that you can hit with some relative accuracy to do more damage. So that's kind of the gist of the idea of Mantis. So if you look at Master Paul Witwad's old videos, he's got an entire video on Dimmak and Dimut and vital point striking. So it's a big part of the catalog of the art.
So what differentiates some of the different styles, or sorry, the different flavors or lineages within the Chow Gar?
Yeah, I mean, and I can only speak from my experience.
Within the Mantis, pardon me.
Yeah, I can only speak from my experience. So the Chuga was the first family that I trained under, and they have a method of training that I didn't see in a lot of the other families, and they have like a proper chisao, like a bridge hands, and a very, very well developed sensitivity pressure reading training. That was some teachers were really emphasized like the forms and the iron body training, and others loved the competitive kind of chisao side of things. And so depending on who you're training with, you would kind of get a different flavor, even within the same family. So, but with the Chuga, they had a really wonderful, well-developed, deep Chisao kind of competitive system that built up kind of the inside of it. The curriculum, as far as forms are concerned, is quite limited or brief compared to some other Kung Fu styles that have like dozens and dozens of forms. So that would be one of the characteristics of the Chuga. And it was very much like testing, training, there's not a whole lot of ranking going on. We used to say you could tell the rank of the person just by touching their hands. That's how you knew where you were in the pecking order, was just how well you could hold up when you're touching hands. And so that was kind of like the basis, the beginning of my training. And that was what I really latched onto, because I didn't get that. I got a lot of punching and kicking with shields and lots of pads and stuff with my Taekwondo when I was young. But when I got into Mantis, they're striking at the head, they're hitting the body, and obviously not 100%, but like you're really making contact and getting used to not flinching when somebody like tries to smack you in the head or something like that. And so the Chuga has a really great Chisao system. I think it's pretty unique. I have not run into a lot of Mantis in the other families that had a chi sao like that. And the Juklum does have what we call sticky hands, but it was different. It was a lot softer, um, and really embodied that principle of iron wrapped in silk or iron wrapped in cotton, where the body was like very strong and supple, and super mobile and fast, really fast work. The gentleman that brought Mantis to the United States, that brand of Mantis, the bamboo forest, his name is Lum Wing Fei, and he did his nickname was Little Monkey because the dude had incredible footwork. He was a small guy too, but he had incredible footwork. And so the Juklum family has, and that's to say that the Juklum here in the United States is not the same as it is in Hong Kong or the same as it is in Europe. So even within the same branches of the family, because of the patrons and the people that they've trained, they're really starting to we're starting to see an evolution, I think, especially in the last 20 years of Mantis and kind of how people are training it and how it's been passed down. Let me just finish up with Chowgar, which is the family that I represent now, and I'm super honored to be a part of that family. It's a big family. It's a much bigger family than any of the two systems that I was a part of before. It is, I was really drawn to Chowgar because of the power training. That was one of the things that I thought that they had locked down in a way that was really different from the other families I had trained with. And it's not to say that they don't have those things. It's just the way it was presented to me when I first started training Chowgar, or introduced to it. It blew my mind. The power training drills. There's entire 2-person drills that are just designed to make your tendons stronger, to make your body stronger, to make your body be able to contest with another human being. And they're just specifically like strength drills or tendon drills or impact drills. And that stuff really turned me on to the Chowgar. And I mean, not to mention, everyone's going to say super deadly, fast striking, hunting the center line, destroying everything on the way in. Any branch of Mantis is going to say the same thing as far as like their objectives, but how they get there is slightly different. And by the time I was in my 30s and was introduced to Chowgar, like I was ready for that. I was ready for that that shift in my own training and my own perspective. And so the Chowgar really comes heavy with power training, impact conditioning. That was another thing. I thought I had like done some good impact conditioning in the past until I met Master Paul and his students and his Sifus and his instructors. My gosh, those boys are hard. I mean, they can give it and they can take it, and they practice hitting each other, impact conditioning, as a regular part of our classes. And so being able to take a shot and be able to give one is a big part of that system. It's like that martial fortitude. So that was the thing that really kind of turned me on to the Chowgar and why I've just really been enjoying training it and teaching it.
The training methods, I think, are what really differentiates the effectiveness, how effective an art is going to be for somebody. And so going through and looking at why is it that grappling does so well? Because, well, you and I can go through and we can go 10% or 100%. If we both control, we can go 100%, get some hard rounds in and not each other. And you wind up seeing that like sporting arts really translate well because you have that ability to get rough and tumble. And you go through, you look at grappling as an example, right? Whether it's catch as catch can or scientific wrestling or freestyle or, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Shuai Jiao, whatever. The fact that we can go through and just get, I can get all your chest hair sweat on my face.
Yeah.
Just soaking it all in. But I can go through and become very comfortable with having you right in my business. And I think a lot of the traditional arts lack. And then one of the things that I find neat about watching some of your videos with Chowgar is I think that the big open secret of Kung Fu and traditional arts is if you're not willing to do a bunch of very sport-specific conditioning and training, the arts aren't going to work. So like as an example, I was taken on as a closed door student in a very specific lineage of twilight foot, and it's all geared towards fighting. I want to go meet my teacher's teacher, or sorry, my teacher want to go meet his teacher. You better bring $8,000 for a Kia Coke because they're all mobbed up, right? Use it. And so I've spent the last 10 months or so conditioning a chop joy. Well, when you start out, it sucks balls hitting with it. And now, like, I can go through and fire that thing out with reckless abandon, and I can hit, 115-pound bag of beans and just heavy bags with it. But if you're not willing to go through and make contact with something, waving arms like spaz is just not going to translate.
Yeah.
But if you are willing to, there is some very, very deep knowledge there. Going through and getting to, center line theory and mother line and, your 3 gates and all that. There's some wild stuff there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Finding those training methods, because the stories I've heard about, so I've had a chance to see some really old video of some guys in our system. Just there's legends about them, and watching their forums, I'm like, this guy was doing that. That form is like looks like nothing, right? There's nothing interesting about that. There is a bunch of very specific conditioning stuff they were doing to get there.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that Mantis kind of has going for it. Are we doing our 3-star drills? Right? Like how much are we banging shins? Are we banging forearms? Are we just kind of like banging each other around in a way that builds up the hardware and not just giving ourselves concussions? And I think that's what really separates something like the traditional arts versus something like boxing, right? I don't want to trade with you. I don't get better at getting punched in the head, but we can still go through and get rough and tumble in it. And it's finding that balance, I think, is the real key.
Yeah, I think you hit kind of like the nail on the head when you said that traditional arts has had a difficulty with their rough and tumble as far as like competitive play. There is, and I think there are some elements to that baked into the system, and like where you can get competitive, especially with like a lot of the hitting drills. You can always hit harder, but it's not necessarily in the way where you're kind of like reacting to something new, like what happens with light contact or medium contact sparring. So when I first started, like it really was like the Chisao was kind of like the benchmark, like where you were at with your competitive play, because it allowed you to react to somebody like changing their tactic, angles, body weight shifting, all of that. It was live play. It was competitive play. And I think that a lot of traditional arts teachers don't do that. And I think that the sparring vocabulary has increased exponentially since I started training Southern Praying Mantis in the 90s, because of MMA and things like UFC and Bellator and all of that. Like, I think that there's so much that can be said, negative and positive, but from my side, I've only seen, for me, like I've only been more and more inspired to take my Mantis and all my training in a way where it can be more competitive and more playful, in the sense of I'm constantly reacting to somebody live. So light contact sparring is not something you can do with a few, with little experience. So like training someone in Mantis to do light contact sparring, I think can take a while before that person feels like they're able to like scrap in the way that they would if they were doing jiu-jitsu or wrestling or something, because you're just power and power and power and positioning, submitting, and competitive play is a kind of like that cornerstone of grappling. And so it's been kind of my goal is to, how can I create more scenarios for my students where we're having more competitive play? Because like once you, because like I do Muay Thai and boxing, and striking, you kind of have to have gloves on, so you don't, like if you want to exert some force on someone and move the way you would when you're fighting, it's really hard to do that with bare knuckle. And it's been years of me kind of experimenting and playing and trying different things and really working with my teachers to kind of help me get a better perspective and a methodology where I can teach people to do that in a safer way, because I find like with my students that have been with me 10 years, I could do it with them, we can light contact spar, but like it becomes, the drop off is pretty quick as far as the skill level when it comes to competitive play. And I think without that, I've run into tons of teachers that like they do impact conditioning hard, they do their forms hard, they do things, they train their skills, but there's no way to play. There's no way to figure out like how to test those skills in an unscripted manner. And I think that's one of the things that I think the traditional arts really needs to have kind of like a come to Jesus moment with itself. Because you're seeing, like in the last, I don't know, however many years, people calling out traditional artists and the guy in China going around China doing his MMA thing, beating up all the Tai Chi instructors and what have you. I think that there's some people see that as really disrespectful. I think it's brilliant. I think it can be seen as disrespectful, but for me, like somebody who's watching, I was like, this is where everyone's got to wake up. Like if you're teaching these arts, like that's your opponent, that guy. Like you need to train to beat him, not your student, not the guy that taught you, not the guy down the street that does a similar art to you, but you need to train to fight that guy. That guy's going to come in, he's going to invite you to a match, and you need to be able to use your art in an effective way, in the same way as MMA trains. And I think that's where I feel inspired to try to bring traditional arts into a realm where we can present it in a way that it is just as effective. Mixed martial arts is cherry picking up a handful of systems and then kind of putting them together. And what's been happening over the last 10, 15, 20 years is that they're pulling deeper into the traditional arts and finding ways to train in a competitive fashion the traditional arts. And that gets me really excited. I love seeing more and more people adding Wing Chun, adding karate, adding Taekwondo into that kind of like MMA flavor. And I think through that, we're going to see more and more traditional artists really coming to the octagon, to the ring and things like that.
I guess one of the things that I make sure that I train with guys who are sport fighters, right? There are guys that I mix it up with. I've been away working for most of the year, but where I try to mix it up with guys whenever I can, where they fight for money. Like I'm fond of it. The world's full of people who can beat the hell out of me. Just most of them get paid to do it. Guys, God bless those guys because they keep us honest. If you've been training for 10 years and you can't deal with the guy that's got 6 months of boxing, you should probably go do 6 months of boxing so you understand. I'm a firm believer in whatever art you've done for any length of time, take a year off and do boxing 2 or 3 times a week and do wrestling 2 or 3 times a week. And just so you understand, and I actually mean like wrestling, the idea of how do we go through and we hand fight and stuff like that, understand how wrestling hand fight works, and then you mix with something like a mantis or a haka system, right? Like Bakmai, like Sibu Dane's doing in Australia. You kind of start mixing those. Well, now we understand because I always pick on Wing Chun because my buddy Pedro does it and he's just a world beater. But it exists in this nebulous range. And it's where boxing starts to end and wrestling starts to begin. And for me, a lot of martial arts is really about I need to go through and get into the zone where I can make my magic work. And I need to keep you there. So when we go through and we look at something like a close range system, there is this range where it doesn't work and this range where it doesn't work. And so your goal is to keep me here. So if we understand how to do that and we don't understand how other people are thinking, you just wind up being behind time, wind up getting caught out of shape. And so when we start looking at the sport arts, we get to see examples of what I've referred to as disruptive technology. So in the context of fighting, one of the first disruptive technologies that really came onto the scene was the jab. And so the jab as we see it now and how it's used was actually came about from a guy named Gentleman Jim. And so before, the jab was just this hand that you would put out there and you do this, right? And just kind of like you poke at him, right? Gentleman Jim came along and it's like, all right, so I'm going to pop, right? I'm going to move, I'm going to gauge, right? And we started seeing, if you talk to a good boxer, 9 different jabs, 10 different jabs, right? There's the up jab, the screw jab, there's a power jab, like John Wayne Parter's out, bang, right? Where he just steps on it. It's just another power shot. But how it is we use the jab to essentially corral people into it. And we wind up seeing with the sport arts, we see games, right? Or we see subsystems, right? So in jiu-jitsu, there's a head and arm series, right? Where I have this series of forks and I'm just going to go through and I'm going to bring you in there and I'm just going to mess with you.
Yeah.
Right. So we wind up seeing that. And when I go through and I talk to a lot of traditional artists, my favorite question to ask is, what's your plan? And I'm like, well, what do you mean? Like, okay, scenario, you get in a tussle, you get in a Donnybrook with someone, right? This is in a parking lot. It's going that way. What are you gonna do? Well, I'm murder. I'm just kidding. I'm like, yeah, let's back that up. But like, how are you gonna do that? Well, I'm gonna hit him. How? Well, as hard as I can, bro. Like,
yeah.
But how are we getting there?
Yeah, man. Like, there's a whole discussion there because like the art of fighting happens way before any punches are thrown.
And I was like, and what I want to know is, what is your strategy? What is your game? Right? So if we go through and use boxing as an example, right? There are systems within like boxing, right? The way the Cubans do it is different than the way the Mexicans do it. The way the blacks in the Northeast do it is way different than they wind up doing it, right? In the Midwest, California, a different way that they do it, right? So when you go through and you see, like, you can see guys, if you go through and you look at boxing, a good buddy of mine, Shadow, is the world's expert on 52 blocks. So going through and looking at like a Pernell Whitaker, or you look at like a Roy Jones Jr., you look at the use of the Philly shell right here, right, comes from something called the Comstock, right? When you look at the cross guard, all that, but all these games developed within that, right? You have the Americans tend to, especially in the Northeast, they tend to be back on their rear foot, and everything's about setting up that hand. But the Mexicans in the block, they do a lot of front hand work, right? That liver shot, right? Right, the pivoting out, right? Doble, right? Right, salir en doble, right? So they go through and they pivot out, right? Because you go to follow and they're there. You go through and you look at the way the Russians do it, even the way power is generated. But what is the strategy, right? You go through and you look at the way some of the Cubans will do it, right? Where they're going through and they're maneuvering out to go through and get this guy to follow them. As the guy squares up, right, they get, right? Where you look at your style. But within the traditional arts, I use the analogy of I know words in Cantonese, but I can't speak them, right? So I can walk into the Chinese grocery store and have see the little bag of soybeans that I need to fill up my bags. I see the one, and I can walk up to the lady behind the counter and go, "Ngoy, yam, dai bao, I
big,
right?" I can't speak it. I know words, and I can kind of piece them together. And the analogy I use is, a lot of your traditional martial artists, they have techniques. Some of them are well developed, some of them are not, but they don't understand the context of how to use them. And not even within a combination, like within a form, nobody cares. How am I going to actually go through and get that to work, right? Where am I stepping out? Am I stepping, right? Like, am I going through and like allowing this person to come in? Am I stepping, right? Am I going through and just bridge it? Like, how is it that I'm making this happen? How am I taking the fight to them? We don't really see that really discussed in the majority of traditional arts, unless they're a sport art, like judo or something.
Yeah. I think Mantis, if I was to be super simple about it, because again, like as you started asking the question, I was thinking, it's like, well, so much happens before hands are thrown, and that kind of determines the attitude of how like how I would respond, So, I mean, I've had to break up fights. I've had my own, and none of them were ever the same. They were all crazy, and yeah, I learned a lot from failing. That's really the truth. Is like I've learned the most about martial arts by either losing in tournaments or losing real fights, and those. Anytime I won, I didn't learn a thing. Every time I lost, I learned tons. I have volumes of things that I've written and voice memos and everything of just like, this is how I failed. And so, yeah, when it comes to the initial part of it, it really is about the way I train is, you know, if you're play fighting, if you're playing to bait someone, if you're trying to create scenarios where the person's going to fall into a trap, like those are drills that you can train so that hopefully you can get the person to fall into some sort of trap. But on the other hand, Mantis is a very direct system. It's if I can reach you, I'm going to climb your arm and I'm going to eat the head. That's what I'm going to do. Whatever I grab, if it's your foot, if it's your clothing, I'm going to grab that. I'm going to climb until I find a vital point, and I'm going to hit it repeatedly until I'm done. I'm not going to let go. I don't want this to happen. I don't want there to be, and that was like one of the things that kind of blew my mind about when I first started training with sport fighters, is that they had this mentality that they were going to do this for a really long time. And I had the mentality of I had to end it immediately. And so I had some pretty fun interactions with some guys when we first started playing, is because I just came with this energy that was like, first of all, not going to last. They didn't like that energy. They were like, okay, let's go. And I was like, bah, 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 and I started going for it and just hunting the center, constantly driving. And they're like, whoa. Imagine doing this for 30 minutes. And I was like, okay. And the moment there started that kind of like back and forth between distances and time, Mantis changed for me. Yeah, like I had to adapt to that because that was an endurance thing. Like I had to treat my Mantis in a way that I had not normally, because usually it's a firecracker. Firecracker, it explodes. Like you're not supposed to sit around and nurse the fight. You're supposed to end it as fast as you can. And I think that's kind of how I've been trained for most of my life. And so it was the moment I seek contact. And it's off. I mean, Mantis is just hands out. Like let me touch you some way or another. Because if there's conflict, that conflict's usually going towards me. I won't pursue conflict if the conflict is fleeing me, So there's an old saying, and I think it's shared by some Wing Chun families, like if your enemy comes to your door, you welcome them in, but then you make them stay. If they try to run, you chase them or you send them. So as they're coming in and out, you're either holding them. If they're trying to escape, you're trying to hit them on their way out, and chasing them down. So Mantis kind of has that kind of mentality. As far as the question that you posed, like how does it start? It starts with touch, anywhere. Great if it's my hands, but if I touch you with my shoulder, if I touch you with something else, if something else touches, I'm looking for pressure. I'm not looking for a target to hit. I want pressure, like a wrestler. I want body weight pushing against me, because I often talk to my my Mantis students like this, because many of them cross train in boxing and Muay Thai and wrestling. I tell them that like doing chisao or pummeling, like in wrestling or clinch fighting, that's like fighting with the lights on. But the moment you're boxing or you're in Mantis range of striking, that's like strobe lights to a Mantis fighter, because it's the moment I touch you, I know where everything else is in your body. I can ride the arm, I can ride the leg, I can ride whatever I'm touching to find the center mass and go from there. So yeah, Mantis wants the lights on all the time. And so I'll strike for as long as I have to with the lights off, but I want to shut down everything my opponent has. And to do that, I want to have contact with them. I want to grab an arm, I want to grab an elbow, I want to overhook or underhook, and then keep hitting, because there's lots of techniques in our arts, right? There's lots of techniques, but it's the attitude that counts. You may use one technique in a fight, right? You may use two. You may never use the entire volume of things that you've trained. But as long as you embody that principle, that essence, that that firecracker, that explosion, something happens and you cannot, you know, assess the situation or whatever. It's like if there's threat of violence, you need to be fast. You need to use as much surprise as you can, and you need to use violence of action. Because if it's, it's very different than sparring, right?
The one of my favorite traditional arts is an art called Bikini Tersha, which is a Filipino art. And I think that the Filipino arts, the ones that I've been exposed to, which is a little bit of estacada, primarily Bikini Tersha, and a little bit of Illustrissimo. The thing that makes them unique is their andragogy and pedagogy, right? Their learning methodology.
Mm-hmm.
And when you and I are going through and we are learning to play with live blades, whether it's a machete, whether it's a gun hunting, it's the blade, right? We learn how to become very relaxed with that stuff. And all of their training methodologies are based on flow state. And my ability to flow from position to position and just, whoa, right? And I think that is the way that we learn to do it. So when I teach people, I do a lot of work on, let's isolate that. So I've trained everyone from 10-year-old girls and grandmothers to guys going places to do things, right? And I'll see how they get back. Everyone has been successful whenever they've been called upon. So we distilled down that it was really, right, it was two things that it was the skill and the will. So the skill consists of generating sufficient force to cause an injury and being able to apply that force in a way that does cause an injury. And then the will comes through, you go through, you look at some modern combatives, exponents and stuff like that, they talk about putting on your war face. I'm going to get your war. If I and you just laugh at me, what you're doing now, I am now the psychological disadvantage. When we get to the other side of that altercation, we wind up getting to a situation where I had to become something I'm not. I created a very psychological imprint on myself for that, and that will stick with it. And we wind up seeing issues with post-traumatic stress later on. So we used a lot of flow work and a lot of what I refer to as kinesthetic triggers or mousetraps, right? So if we're going through and we're doing this thing and the shot comes in and it's boom, right? And then we go through, we start, you throw your straight punch, I move over, I return, and we go like that. Good. So I know the game. And then, okay, well, you're doing that fairly well. We go through and we make sure that you can generate sufficient force of that off a pad drill. Great. Now we go through and we put in the flow drill. Great. All right. So now we have that. So we're looking at a static flow drill with pads. We're looking at a static flow. We're looking at dynamic flow drill with pads. And then we start getting into something with hair and heart, where we're just really learning to hone these reactions. Okay, you develop proficiency in that. Now we're going to add another option. And so as you get good and as you get better, have that, but we're not trying to win that drill. I think that that's really the thing that, if we're looking at training for a non-dueling environment, which going through and doing a lot of sparring, if I'm training myself to pull my punches all the time and I have a finite amount of time to train, right? So I'm not a full-time fighter, right? I have 4 hours a week. I show up on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. That's what we do, right? Great. I got an hour and a half, 2 hours on each of those. What is it I'm doing? I'm doing some strike mechanics. I'm doing conditioning, typically about a half hour, movement drills, blah, blah, blah. We need to get the flow work. Now, I need to go through and be able to pop, bang, and deliver that. If I'm going through and just learn to kind of play with you and not getting that becomes tough. When we go through and we can start looking, okay, there's that flow and we're moving this down, great. But if we're looking at going through and creating a sparring environment, if you've been doing this for 10 years, actually, yeah, let's say you've been doing what you've been doing for 10 years. I've been doing it for 3 months. You are 145 pounds and I'm 215. Your 10 years is going to feel like you flushed down the toilet as I fucking steamroll you, because nothing you do is going to work. because there's just such a disparity. So how do we create an environment for new students in which you're getting benefit, in which I'm getting benefit?
Yep.
So having the flow drills, nobody has to be dominated, because in a self-defense environment, I mean, that's really what we're looking at in a traditional art is I need to convince you that the technique that I showed you, that you're going to be throwing fireballs with it. I need to do that through pad drills. I need to condition you on with the technique that we have taught, because under duress, we do not go through and default to weird shit, right? We see grabbing, we see overhand rights, we see headlocks, we see this outside of a bar from untrained people, we see this from 3-year-olds in the schoolyard.
Yep.
So we need to go through and show them under duress that this stuff will work successful. We need to use perfunctory resistance as we scale that stuff up. And so I think that having those flow drills are there because you and I can go through and play with live blades, right? We can go through, like I was down in Mexico showing my buddy some stuff, and his parents come out and him and I both have a trooper machete, right? And they're like and the workers that they have are like,
what the heck are they doing?
Right? What's going on as we're going through and doing this? But it's how do we get that fluidity and that familiarity, and how do we train in a way in which we're not breaking down the hardware, upgrading the software? And I think flow work is really important.
I love it when you say that, dude. That's such a cool. I love that you say that. Yeah, that's such a cool way to explain it.
Like, and so how do we go through and do that, right? So we look at things. How do we go through and get used to kind of getting banged around? Dutch drills, right? Like Dwayne Ludwig from Bang Muay Thai. He has some unreal little nuggets out there, right? So I had an opportunity to train at Bang Muay Thai school for a couple of years, and the bulk of it is all combinations. You are learning to hit your stuff on a body.
Yeah.
I'm learning to go through and use footwork, ambidextrous, right? Going through and looking at how are these games in there? Okay, well, can I go through and step back and generate power for someone coming in? Mm-hmm. Can I close that distance, right? Can I move out? Can I slip fire, right? So we start getting into those things, and it really becomes something interesting. He has something like there's these little chunks that he had that was like, I don't know, like he's a very interesting guy because he's quite insightful. Right. And so going through and applying those philosophies and those ideas to traditional arts. All right. So he has some of your first to Puerto Rican flow. So, which is plant, return, and follow. If I go through and I hit you, right, once or twice or whatever, you good?
Yep. My wife's asking me where our car keys are. They're in the office, dear. It's trying to point at the office.
It's called Puerto Rican flow, right? So plant, return, follow. There are 3 things that are going to happen, or one of 3 things that you are going to do after I've gone through and blasted you, and I will. One of 3 things after you blast me, I'm going to stay where I am. I am going to run away, or I'm going to drive into you. There's only 3 things that are going to happen. Mm-hmm. So going through, start building, okay, you've gone through and you've done whatever that is in your traditional art, whatever your tactics are, your techniques are, how do we apply that, right? So it's like, okay, well, if I've gone through and I've landed, right, I've landed, and you start pushing into me, I need to be able to move back and step out, get off the line. So that could be that I'm stepping back with check hook, mm-hmm. Right? We go through and we see that I've kind of landed this and start running away. Okay, well, there's that step cross, mm-hmm. Right? Or maybe once when I've hit this and you stay in that position. Okay, well, now I'm going to post out to create my spot, and then I'm going to move laterally. And so it doesn't matter the techniques that you use to achieve this. There's these little, it's like, how do we get so we can program the person to do that? And I don't need to go through and knock your head back like a Pez dispenser in order for us to get that value.
Yeah.
We just need context for us to apply our techniques in as we go through. Hi, Sarah. We just need to go through and find context that we can apply this stuff to under duress. So that way, when we get to those real situations, it's not here goes nothing.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of a book by a guy named Ken Murray called Training at the Speed of Life?
If it wasn't telling me about this just recently? One of my students just did.
Yep.
Yeah, that's like it's been bouncing around. Yeah, I haven't read it, but
So Ken Murray is actually a Canadian. He was with the Ottawa Police, I believe, and he's the guy that develops Simunition FX marking cartridges. So he's got his book, Training at the Speed of Life, available on Amazon. I get no kickback for you buying it. He goes through and talks a lot about how do we go through these operating conditioning and scenarios to set people up for success. And we don't need to go through and do it in a way that isn't a traditional art. How do we go through and use our arts in context? Because otherwise,
yeah,
we're not going to.
I love that you said flow, because that's like one of the things that I have been spending a lot of time on. I love that. If you're familiar with the book On Flow, I can't pronounce the author's name, but it's just called Flow, and it's brilliant. One of the things he talks about is, in order to create the flow state, not just flowing, moving with your training partner, but creating a flow state, a psychological, physiological state in us that gives us pretty much the best learning environment. The things he says is, he's like, the rules have to be clear. Like, you have to define the boundaries of whatever drill or whatever activity you're doing. It has to be clear, and it has to be challenging enough, and it can't be too easy. So those are some of the rules. He said, like, these things have to be in place in order for a human being to experience the flow state. And right next to, like, literally right here through these two doors, they're having a screamer class right now. I was just talking to the Guru Brinson before he walked in there about chatting with you. So they're in there doing Cadena de Mano right now, and I think he's doing Serrata. So I have a very limited experience with Filipino martial arts, although my wife is from the Philippines. I've been to the Philippines numerous times, but I only trained a couple years in FMA, but I'm a huge fan of it. One of the reasons is, and I think anyone who studies Wing Chun will probably agree with me, there's so much overlap between the traditional, especially the Southern Chinese arts, and Filipino martial arts. And I love what you mentioned about their pedagogy, is how they build their drills, and eventually getting to this place from script, and then flowing in the script, and then breaking the script, and then being dynamic in the flow. They do a great job of that, and I've been watching and studying their methods of that for years, just in the teaching element. One of the things I love that they do is they do pressure drills, where they basically are going to tell you, now I'm going to go hard. This is what hard feels like. And so I can't teach you this stuff and never pressure you, right? And so obviously the pressure is according to the base and the person's skill, but man, I've seen them do some crazy shit, like as far as their pressure drills, and I'm impressed by that. So I've always had a huge respect for Filipino martial arts, being able to be in that flow state, real similar to like watching jiu-jitsu guys flow on the ground, watching the Filipino martial arts go through the flow, the Serrata, and even the Sinawali, and with the knife as well, and just constantly like lock and blocking in a free, challenging way. I think that is probably, and like when we're talking about like one of the challenges of traditional martial arts, and honing the person's skills so that they can compete, and in order to upgrade their software, I think Filipino martial arts has a great method for that. I think jiu-jitsu does too. Boxing does. Like a lot of sport fighting will do that. But as far as traditional arts, I really think Filipino martial arts really bring a lot to the table when it comes to that.
John Danaher talks about creating dilemmas, right? In chess, they refer to them as forks.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to, for me, like, so the first art that I ever belted in was Bujinkan Ninjutsu. I mean, I grew up in 35 to 40,000 people with a drink, fuck, fight, and play cards. I already knew it. My first fight was the second day in kindergarten, where I had just recently got my training wheels off, dropped my backpack because someone's picking on my twin brother, and walked up and blasted that guy in the nose just like the old man told me to, right? Mm-hmm. So I knew what fighting was, which was an advantage. But in Bujinkan, I learned about fighting without how to fight. And so when we wind up getting into how is it these things happen, it's really important to be able to find out how to make this stuff work. We don't. It's we just wind up getting lost. We wind up getting sucked out of shape, and then we wind up going to these traditional arts where it's like the guy that attacks loses, which statistically is incorrect, right? So then we wind up creating that. And so for me, when I had to get to a situation where I was having to apply my craft in meat space, and the part that I struggled with the most was it wasn't until I started doing traditional martial arts that I had a problem just hitting someone, because the reps of that guy losing, right? And so it's like, and so when we go through and we talk about things like chi sao and push hands and stuff like that, people go through and be like, oh, well, it doesn't have any value. The fuck it doesn't. We need to understand the environment in which these systems were developed for. All right. So if you look at Red Bow Wing Chun, Red Bow Wing Chun was designed to work on riverboats, and was like, it wasn't for like peaking upper people. It was for like these riverboats, like the red boats were like where gambling and prostitution was on the river, right? So it's like it's very, very in tight. So if you go through and take a system that is designed to be working in an elevator or smaller, and we put it into a boxing ring, why are we surprised that it doesn't perform well, right? Yeah. That doesn't mean the boxing doesn't work in a phone booth, but we need to understand what it is this thing was for. And so when I've used chi sao and push hands a lot, where I would have this, right, in a context where I can't go through and nail this guy because he hasn't done enough yet. But just going through and he's blustering, he's doing all this, and just setting my hands on the outside of him. Hey, man, it's all right. Lowering my weight, right, ready to kind of go through and drive if I need to. And he starts moving, I kind of moving my hands with him, and now his hands are heavy. He's just like, well, I now have this point of assessment, right? We have the context that these things are being used in. Okay, well, now I take him into a dilemma. If he goes through and pushes into me, we can pivot and we can go pop his head back like a peasant Spencer. We can drop him into the shit locker, whatever we need to do. We now have this game that we can play with that, right? I do this, right? He goes back and I do this. And so now we have this whole thing where we have this dilemma that we've sucked them into. And we really see guys like Donaher and stuff like that talk about that. In chess, we call them forks. I go through and I give you this bait. Yep. He can just chill out if he wants to. But now I have to the game at which I'm really good at. So what is my strategy? Well, this guy blows up and does his thing. And I'm like, well, I'm just here and I haven't done anything yet. Now, if he goes through and freak, right? Well, now the cameras see that. Yeah. So how do we go and suck people into this dilemma? And I really think that the sport arts, whether it's boxing, going through and shooting your jab at the outside corner of a guy's eye to get him to move into your power, right? Right? Me going through and using my check hook to pivot out, and as the guy squares up to me, as he comes around and I split his guard with that, I do this long uppercut of this Dutch uppercut. Looks a lot like a pow choy, where it kind of comes underneath. Well, he's squaring up and now we've moved him into it. Well, if he doesn't take the bait and follow, it doesn't work, right? We go through looking at, okay, well, as we move back and we load up this fascia, right, and move back, if they don't follow, they're fine. But if they do, right? So going through and looking at those dilemmas, and I think that there's something really beautiful when we can start incorporating that type of idea and philosophy into the traditional arts. And I would say it's just reintroducing them, because I think it was already there before.
Yeah, no, without question. Yeah, I think a lot of this stuff, I think a lot of the reasons why we're kind of coming into this frustrated kind of era when it comes to traditional arts. I can't say it's all one thing, but definitely when you commercialize anything, you run the risk of losing substance. And so, like, I knew a lot of guys, I mean, I still talk to guys that, like, they did Taekwondo in the 70s, and wow, those freaking tournaments were badass, and they were bare knuckle, and they were, talking to me about the old days. And I was like, yeah, that's when shit was real, you know? And then we had this really crazy time. And I know like where Karate Kid came out, man, in the 80s, and holy shit, did the traditional arts just end up on every corner like a freaking McDonald's, you know? And anybody who had any sort of training was teaching kids, and it became this very much, especially for immigrants, like the guys that first taught me, they were immigrants and they were running a business, you know, and that's what happened. You know, they did the best they could, you know, but like obviously they were not training people for war, you know, or for underground fighting or what have you. And so I think that we ended up losing a lot of really the substance. I think a lot of the hardcore training still was going on. It was just not seen anymore. Like the dark recesses of the internet where truth is happening, and all of the garbage is just constantly plastered in front of everyone's faces, and they can't find it, or they can't, when they see it, they don't understand it. And I think that's one of the big problems, because they'll be like, oh, well, that's just kung fu, and I've seen kung fu like fail a million other times. And when they see real kung fu, they don't understand it, because they're like, oh, it's just like the you know, the puppy mill martial arts schools that are everywhere. But I think that we are really seeing a change, though.
Wristed and lame.
Say that again.
I said, quite frankly, the majority of kung fu is limp-wristed and lame.
Yeah.
It just work because people aren't doing the stuff that's required to make it work, right?
Yeah.
Great that you can generate power if you don't have a way to deliver it through the right structures without it buckling, without hurting yourself more than you're hurting them. You're not learning to make it land, right? So yeah, if you see a giant degrading in it, and we wind up having, you know, people that are running it like a business, and the people that are most visible, and there's that old adage, the loudest man in the room is rarely the strongest man in the room, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think we are seeing it. I mean, for me, like running into guys like you, and I've run into a handful of other people, you know, through Instagram and YouTube and what have you, and I hear a lot of the same stories. Like guys that are just like, yeah, like this is similar backgrounds, similar desires for the traditional arts to be seen in the correct light, to be seen, because like I said, because you see so much garbage, when you see the real thing, only the people who have trained the real thing can look at it and go, oh yeah, there it is. You know, you can see it. Like if you've got training and you watch somebody move, you watch somebody hit, you watch somebody take a hit, you watch how they train, you can tell real quick whether it's got substance or not. You know, granted, you don't want to judge a book by its cover, but if you have the expertise in the background, it's way easier to differentiate something that's just, you know, sped up to look really fast and look really flashy than somebody whose training methods are going to turn them into a freaking tank, you know?
Going through and actually what is real. So I have a project in the works that we're dubbing Atomic Fists, and I had the opportunity to learn a very odd type of strike mechanics. It doesn't look like I'm moving fast or anything like that, and when it connects, it's just there. And it's you can watch on video and see the shockwave travel through people, and it's heavy. So it wind up look like anything on camera, and so we wind up running into stuff where, and it's not like I have magical powers, right? Like I was shown how to do this and figured out the rest, and I can teach someone else how to do it, right? Mm-hmm. So it's nothing special about me, but we wind up getting this kind of Dunning-Kruger type of thing where you need to know a certain amount about something to know how much you don't know about it, right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And watch a YouTube video on the Dunning-Kruger because you don't know what you don't know, and it takes a certain amount of knowledge to know that you don't know anything, right? So what kind of guilty pleasures is, like, I was at the barbershop today getting all fresh for this, and I was talking to my barber, these Syrian guys, like, right, and I saw him switch combs. It was like, well, what difference is there in a comb? He goes, oh, there's lots, right? Because I was like, oh, you picked up the one for the left side. He goes, no, it's like you know, the teeth spacing, the teeth width, how many teeth there are per inch, you know, what type of you
how
have, and I'm
flexible
just like,
they are.
he's like, I was like, but it's just a comb. He's like, if you don't know anything, it's just a comb, right? And so it's like, what's the difference? What's the difference between $1,000 pair of scissors and a $50 pair of scissors?
Mm-hmm.
So we really wind up getting into this thing where like I'll post something online. Like I posted a video the other day where I'm doing a drill working on a sow choy, right? Which is this kind of and just like let that go, and so this comes up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what is that, right? And people be like, oh, that wouldn't work. Like, well, you're only not in the way of it, because you've seen that I have, and I'm generating enough force where it's just whistling through the air, and you can hear it on the camera. That's like, 50 away. It's going to blast through whatever's in front of it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, is there benefits to that, right? But if you don't know what you're looking at, it's a turkey looking at a television set.
Yeah.
It doesn't even make sense what it is. And so we wind up having this thing, and I think that with MMA gyms, the quality, right? You'd alluded to the traditional arts, the quality going down, right? As there became this kind of rage, right? Right? This fad. I think that we're starting to see that with MMA, and I mean, many places and not find an MMA gym. And I travel around a lot, and whenever I can, I'll stop in at a place. Now I can tell you that I've found some really, really good folks, and I've found some places where I'm like, what you're doing is unethical. Like, convincing the skill set that they absolutely do not. This is mind blowing to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, because there is no qualification. And so I think that we're starting to see a lot of people that are looking, I don't say that there's a renaissance, but there's something where people are looking for a more authentic experience. They're looking for people who have deeper knowledge. And so it makes room, guys like you, or Dale Dugas, or Dane Tobias out of Australia, guys that are doing, like, they have knowledge and they are teaching it, right? And they are starting to present it. And with it being the information age, you're not relegated or have to submit to whatever junk was nearby. Right? I learned to throw knives and spikes so they fly straight like a dart from a guy in Russia during COVID by exchanging videos with him, and I paid him to do it. And I can do that from, when I'm dialed in 20 feet. But more than 15 feet, I can go pick something up and just, right, with just flick of my wrist. And so through and using that stuff. So now we have, how do we go through and get into training this stuff and passing this along, and going, like, your spring arm dummy, is it the one that you're banging on? Right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, what does that set look like? How do we go through and pass this along? What does the solo training work look like? And so I think that we're going to start seeing a revival in interest, where people are looking for that more authentic experience.
Yeah, and obviously that's my hope, and it's kind of what I've been working towards for the last 2 decades, really, to kind of really bring traditional arts in, or at least try to do the best I can to represent it as authentically as I can. Not everybody can learn at Chinese restaurant after hours or in people's basements or backyards. People coalesce around a gym, and my gym is fairly unique in the sense of, like, I've got, like, full on American Ninja Warrior on this side, strength and conditioning and boxing on this side. Let's see if you can swing around and see kettlebells, steel mace, free weights here. And then through these doors is my training hall, where you see all the red mats and everything. And yeah, for me, like, I don't know, like, after a while of training martial arts, I really got interested in, like, the whole concept of warrior culture. There's this really great book. I highly recommend it if you haven't read it. It's called Natural Born Heroes. And I'm terrible with freaking names, but like it's written by the guy that wrote uh, it was a running book. It was like super famous running book. Born to Run or Free to Run or Born to Run maybe. Anyway, it's called Natural Born Heroes. I read that book and it kind of cross sections with World War II, but the guy talks about this island in Greece where this kind of like pivotal thing happened in World War II in the Mediterranean. They talk specifically about the people that were from this island. That the island is extremely treacherous. The cliffs were steep, the rocks were sharp, and he went there to go while he was researching for the book, and he was taken kind of through the areas in which this kind of event took place. And he's like, starts talking about the guy that's taking him through these kind of treacherous trails in these hills. And he's like, this guy's super old, and he moves like a freaking gazelle. He's like, he bounces from rock to rock as if he's floating. He's like, I'm fit, I'm young, and I'm gonna die here. And he's like, he was so amazed by the athleticism of this older gentleman and the people in general in that area. And he kind of started researching it and kind of tied it into this, the original form of parkour, which is called natural fitness or the natural method. And you have a bunch of spin-offs of fitness modalities today that are based on this guy's theory, his philosophy. And you have things like MoveNat, you've got parkour, you've got everything in between. But he specifically talks about you need to be able to, I don't know if you can see it in my shirt, we have pursuit, escape, and attack. These are his 3 kind of like modes of training. I'm going to really butcher the generalization here because it's French, but he basically says like you need to have free weights, so weights and obstacles, running, swimming, and self-defense. And that was his kind of like shtick, is like to be a kind of complete fitness, that you should train all of these things. And he was super into wrestling, boxing, any sort of self-defense modes, but he was big into obstacles, especially outdoor stuff. That's where you get like the parkour and the free running that, and it was like the 1920s. This dude was in World War I. I think he was traveling in World War I, and he saw a bunch of native people. And this is who the author is writing about. He's writing about the history of parkour. And so Georges Hebert came up with the natural method by watching people in the countries that he was visiting, watching how fit they were based on how they interacted with their environment. And the book Natural Born Heroes talks about this group of people in Greece and how they moved around freely. And he talked about this quality of our physiology that he calls human elastic recoil. And it's our ability to absorb force and then bounce out of it or redirect it, you know? And when he started talking about this, my brain broke because I have decades of not just fitness, but martial arts training in me, kind of all jumbling around. And he starts talking about this red thread that runs through all of these disciplines. And I was like, holy shit, like this is like, I'm already living this, but I didn't know that somebody had articulated a philosophy behind it. And I highly recommend checking out Natural Born Heroes. I don't get paid or anything. It's just a great book. Chris Nick something. I can't, like I said, I'm terrible with names. But anyway, so that's how I formatted my gym. My gym was creating that red thread that went through obstacle course training, resistance training, strength training, and martial arts. So that was, I wanted to kind of connect those for people, because what happens is when you start training in one modality, you gain skill, I would call it generic skill, in other modalities. So like if you're doing American Ninja Warrior and you're learning how to do what's called a lache, where you swing from one bar to the next, you have to learn how to kip. You have to learn how to explode and pop your body in a way that sends you through the air. Now, the wonderful thing about that is when you do it right, you land it. When you fail, you fall. Okay? In martial arts, that same wave motion, that sine wave that flows from our feet to our hands, it is the same type of action. And so what I love is I love training people. Specifically, they'll come in, they'll do some fitness stuff, and I'll be like, well, you're kind of already prepared for martial arts and obstacle course. You can start applying your strength through space in a way that's going to make you more capable. And I would call it more useful, because, you know, doing a box jump is great if box jumps are the things that you want to be really good at. But for me, a box jump is to allow me to do other things, right? So my gym was built in a way based on the natural method. That's why we're called Orthodox Natural Fitness. We have coaches training all these different modalities. But like I said, my love is when I can grab somebody and say, you're good at this thing, but you're already halfway good at this other thing if you want it. Yara Set, who's one of our coaches, she's been on American Ninja Warrior at least 2 times, 3 times. I think she's filming her 4th run now, in the next couple of weeks. She came in as a CrossFit coach. She just brought her son in, and she just wanted to see the gym. And she was already a level 2 CrossFit coach. And she came in and she watched one of our obstacle course race, like championships, like a competition. And she was like, shit, like, I'm really strong. I could probably do that. And within, I don't know, a year, she was on the show. So she took her incredible strength that she got from CrossFit and then realized that she was already halfway there in a bunch of other training modalities that she could be successful in. And that's kind of like one of the things that I love about training in general, because, man, I get punched in the face a lot and I get tired of it. And so I want to do something else. So I do some Olympic weightlifting, and I did that for a little while. And then I ran into this. I ran into steel mace, and that really blew my mind. Like that opened me up because it gave me something creatively that I could do. That really I felt was very specifically connected to martial arts training, that it benefited my martial arts training. So anyway, that's just like kind of when it comes to natural method and training in general. It's great to be able to drill, but then there's this kind of like, through a different lens, you're already good at some other things. Let me give you one more example. So I told you that my first family of Mantis did a lot of Chisao. And one of my teachers used to say this thing that I repeat all the time: let the pressure teach you. Pressure teaches you. The technique is only good if it works under pressure. And so the pressure, and sometimes you can't even do the technique right if the pressure isn't there, you know? So that is one of those things that like blew my mind when I started wrestling, because I was really good at Chisao. I won some tournaments. I really enjoyed that level. I was very competitive with it. And then I started wrestling, and holy shit. 2 things happened. One, I got humbled real fast because their pressure reading was off the charts, and it dealt with different ranges that I wasn't familiar with. So I was working with a guy, and we were doing Chisao, and all of a sudden he ended up behind me. And I was like, whoa, what did you do? Because I had never had anybody do what he did to me in a traditional arts context. He did something that was wrestling oriented that I've never seen a Kung Fu person do. And immediately saw the value in what he did. He said, oh, I'm sorry. He started to apologize. And he's like, I'm sorry, I used to wrestle in high school, and this feeling that you're giving me reminds me of that. And so I just reacted. And from that moment on, I realized that the pressure reading that you learn in Chisao is a great gateway drug for wrestling, and like Greco and stand-up and clinch work and Muay Thai and all kinds of stuff. And so for me, like when I start talking to other people who are either in traditional arts or let's say they're a wrestler, and they're like, well, I want to do some striking, I want to do some Kung Fu. And so, all right, just know that the pressure reading that you learned in wrestling is going to make you a better fighter. It's actually going to translate into striking. And you can use that ability and use it as you learn this other mode of fighting. And I think it's really cool to be able to connect that for people.
So I think that learning is a skill, and the going through and just learning new things is incredible. Uh, so when I was very young, I had a disease that left me with nerve damage because I had spinal bacterial meningitis. So I have significant fine motor skills, my vestibular system, significant hearing loss in one ear, and and then because of that, I wound up falling downstairs with a spiral fracture. So I didn't actually walk right till it was.
Wow.
And so for me, right, like there's a variety of ways to handle that. I have had a twin brother that had none of those issues. And so I just didn't know any better. And I just assumed that I had to work and work and work and work. And so what happened was I just became a lifelong learner. And when I would going through and doing something, I would find that there was a weakness. It was an opportunity to step up and do something else. Okay, well, here's this thing, right? So you had mentioned the God or the steel mace. So I got into those a little while ago. The thing that I find interesting about it is it's not just like, yeah, I work on that frontal plane and transverse plane, but it's also that I have to learn how to go through and get out of the way of it, right? And so there's a perception component to it where, right, you talked, there's this loading and unloading that has to happen. And when we go through and look at something like chi sao or sticky hands, I need to be able to give incoming fire the right of way. If that like that one's only 12 kilos, if that coming around starts to go bad and I don't get out of the way of it, it's heavy enough it will break my leg. It'll break whatever it slams into. It's a cannonball on the end of it. So
Cannonball in the stick. I like that.
How do I go through and manage this weight? How do I dynamically contract, relax, and brace? And so it's like, and so going through and just learning how to learn, because for me, being strong isn't enough, right? So when going through and looking at how power is generated, when I started doing, start working with my Sifu, I'd already taught in four countries and in 2 languages, right? And for me, I had to empty my cup and learn new ways to generate force that I'd never done before, right? Ways of going through and using my fascial sling system, right? So it wasn't just that I was going through and boxing, but I'd be able to and like really load up and fire, or right, kind of using like a shuffle where it's more like a hip check than it is like a boxing punch. And so, but every time I learn a new skill, I get better at learning skills. So anything that you along the way, right? Like you look at gymnastics, right? So if you look at something like a plyo muscle up, right, on a bar, where I go through and I load and just not kip, but load, pop. And so I launch myself over the bar, basically like a reverse snatch. I catch myself in that full extension. I'm learning to explosively open and close.
Arch hollow.
See gymnastics. Is there instances at which we are going through and explosively closing or explosively to drive to create arts? Maybe a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, like that's like I said, like that's where my mind was blown when I really started training in other I don't like calling it fitness modalities, but just like ways that were like warrior style of training. I mean, honestly, like different gymnastics and ground training and things like that. Like learning about the arch hollow. Like my wife's a yoga instructor. I'd go to a yoga class and just get completely humbled. But there would be movements in there. I was just like, oh, this feels just like mantis. This feels just like it. You know, I was doing I was in these explosive ring rows, the kipping ring row, and I was talking to a guy, and he's like, "Oh, why do you kip?" He's like, "That's not good for strength training." I was like, "You're right. It's not good for strength training. It's great for ballistic training, though. Like if you want to throw your body and create that sine wave and come out, kipping is the way to do it. You know, like so. Don't hate on the kip because it's maybe a cheating way to do a pull up." But that kip is going to be great for all kinds of other things, and it's going to help you develop that wave power, right? Yeah, that arch hollow creates that wave.
As long as we know why it is we're doing it, right? And as long as it's taught properly, right? Like if you're not, like the kipping pull-up is a really good example. If you're not strong enough to do a proper pull-up, maybe bouncing off your connective tissue and bounce your tendons is not the way that you should be doing it.
Right.
Looking at, I have a video that takes someone from not being able to do any muscle ups to going through and being able to do them successfully. I actually have a coming up on the 8th of September. I'm doing for called Mups for Pops, where I have to do 100 muscle ups in 100 minutes. I'll do more. And all the proceeds are going towards what we're doing, some work my buddy does down in Mexico with street dogs. But we go
Yeah, I checked
through.
that out. That was awesome, man. I was watching you, and I was watching you on your on the fugitive page, and I was like, damn, he's doing lots of muscle ups. And then I heard you mention that to me the other day, and I was like, he's gonna do how many? Damn, 100 muscle ups in 100 minutes.
If I can't do 100, so what we're doing is like if someone meets a certain threshold, if they donate a certain amount, we give them either a program on the GATA on how to do it. And I mean, you and I can talk about how I think that you're wrong on how you do it, and you can tell me and I mean, not like Down syndrome, but like, you know, you left your left signal light on for 8 kilometers, right? Which is about 5 miles, if you're wondering. So like they do that. Hey, we'll give you the program on the GOD or the MACE. You go to the next level, right? You get the other one. But if I can't do 100 in 100 minutes, you get another free program.
Boom.
So like going doing that. But when we go through and look at how it is people are training that muscle up, well, maybe if you don't have the stability, like if you aren't strong in the top of the bottom position, if you can't hold that, you're not strong in the bottom of the top position, maybe ballistically launching yourself into a position that you are unstable with is a bad idea, right?
Yeah.
And if seeing, you know, people blow their shoulders out or get them ripped out of the socket, and why are we surprised that didn't work?
Yeah.
So it's like kipping is a skill, but it's an advanced skill, and we need to go through and have the strength for our bodies to be able to recover from it.
Oh, I love that you just said it that way. Yeah. So this is
right. And going to be able to go through and snap. Like I'm gangly. I'm like 6'3" and about 200 pounds, right? But for me to go through and launch myself and like from the bottom to catch in that full top position, whether on rings where I'm pulling off the floor or from a bar underneath and launching, catching, that's a very advanced skill.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
Especially I'm going through catching in like a Bulgarian turnout, very advanced skill. You need to be stable in all of these places and be very well conditioned and build up to it. So great, but and it's a good skill, but we need to get there first, right? We need to earn our way there.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, you said something earlier that reminded me of something where, like, when I talk to my students, we do this exercise. It's called grinding arm. Grinding arm is where two people put their back of their fists against each other, and they push, and they push, and they push, and it's freaking excruciating. And it's kind of a badge of honor for anyone at Chow Guard to be able to do that for an extremely long amount of time with tons of pressure. And so it's like one of the things that when people join the gym, come to my class, it's like one of the things that it's like one of the reasons why they quit, because it's like if I was a northern kung fu school, it would be the horse stance, right? Sitting in horse stance, just dying, right? So in Chow Guard, it's grinding arm. It's what we call chai sao. But what I talk to my students about is like, if you're going to have power, if you're going to be able to, let's say, handle somebody's power coming to you, you have to have the right bandwidth to be able to handle that in your shoulders, to be able to handle the shock, right? So it's not just a muscle thing. You have to create that bandwidth. You have to expand that bandwidth through the drilling and the strength training and the jongs that allows your body to be able to absorb that pressure. So a lot of times I think, like, well, people will be like, oh, well, this technique will help you absorb somebody's pressure. And it's like, the technique might start, that if your body cannot, if you don't have the bandwidth for force on those joints specifically, then you're going to crumble when real force comes at you. So you have to create that bandwidth. So I love how you said that earlier, preparing the body for the type of thing that's going to do.
One of the things that I believe in martial arts, one of the adages I've kind of come to is confidence in combat comes through consistent contact. So
love that. That's true. Couldn't be truer.
I'm in a situation, right? It's going south. There is no way out of it. And I really should have hit this guy about 5 minutes ago, but I haven't. And why have I not done that? Because I haven't hit anything for real, and I don't know what it's actually going to do. All right, I've been training for 10 years. Don't know that when I'm going to hit this person, if it's going to work. But I know right now they're not currently hitting me, and if I hit them, they're definitely going to hit me. So you wind up saying, we're like, well, what do I do? Right? Where I've been going through hitting a bag of beans with this very hard. Like I hit a 60-pound bag of steel shot now. I know.
Yeah, exactly. I heard you in that other video. I heard you. I was like, what's that beans? Thunk.
In that smaller one, that Haka head bag, that's 60 pounds of steel shot. That's 330, which it looks like black sand. That's what I'll find it. So going through and just right. I know what's going to happen when I hit somebody because I know what I can do because I'm hitting all the time, right? You know exactly, like you know whether you're going to be able to hit that knee tap off the Russian tie. Done it a lot through consistent contact. And whatever art it is we're training, if we're not having that consistent contact, there's no way to have confidence in combat.
Yeah.
There's none. And so going through and, right, like banging on, right, like I got this triad body bag that we built, and it's exactly for, so I can go through and I can blast this thing with those 3-star style drills because I can hit it as hard as I want. And I don't have to worry about being a dick to my partner. So I think that when we're looking to spring arm, I mean, what is it? It's the what, Jung?
Well, Mukian Jung is just the general term for like the wooden man that you hit. And there's, as you mentioned before, like in Choi left foot and other arts, there's tons of different mooks. You know,
there's like almost 20 in Choi left foot, right, depending on where you're at. Right, like you have the mahjong, which is the horse dummy. You have jung, all that, right? So when we go through and start looking at how do I go through and bang this thing around? Well, if I've gone through and like like with that on that Xinjiang, there's that limb that's up. When I go through and just bang, and I'm kind of getting, you know, the Rolex part of my wrist or my, I mean that's kind of like just shin kicking someone in the dome, right? What that'll do. And I know that you know, wood arm that's made out of ash, that it's not that is harder than that person's skull.
Yeah.
Right. So we
know. The long bag that you were talking about? Is that the really long bag? That
we have two. We have the triad body bag, which is thicker, and then we have the Lohan limb bag. The Lohan limb bag is it's skinnier, and you can use it for fill it up with pea gravel or beans or whatever. You start shooting your jab right for that or going through and working that speed where you're plucking. So you're learning to set, but you can also use it for your clearing style strikes, or you can kind of go through and move it and fire through for pun cues and stuff like that. Putting it in front. So there's different ones that we have.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to getting mine because I was like watching you play with it. I was just like, oh. That looks like you can do all kinds of fun things with that. So I was, I'm looking forward to grabbing one of those.
There's a guy who's like an old school karate guy, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I've been doing a lot of conditioning. I'm gonna fill it with sand." I was like, you should start with the beans." And I was like, no, I'm gonna fill it with sand. So he fills this thing up with like 100 pounds of sand. And I was like, okay. He's like, man, this really hurts my. I was like, yeah, no shit.
Yeah.
Right? Like something that you need to build to. But what's nice about them is as you hit, it has enough give.
Yeah. It's got some.
And
It's got some frequency. It's got some play.
yeah, so what's interesting is like if you're in like an apartment or something like that, like over Project Treadstone, because I work a fairly great distance from where I actually put head to bed.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a second place. I just set something up at a condo, and because it's filled with a medium, that sucks up a lot of the shock. So
Yeah.
it annoy my neighbors.
Yeah, that's also like, yeah, that's why this is so useful, because
Yeah.
when I have my Mukjung or it's like the Wing Chun dummy or the spring arm, man, you start working on those things, it's so loud. Yeah, that's why like the ring, when I got into doing this, and like iron palm, like and using the shot and the beans, yeah, my neighbors are a lot happier. Not making that gunk, 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 gunk sound all the time.
Right, like heavy bags jump around a lot. I have a couple samples that are showing up right away. The Triad Tree Trunk, which is more for going through and specifically conditioning shins and going through and looking at like you're a Muay Thai guy. So like another really good example. Oh yeah, you just kicked the guy in the leg. Okay, well I can throw a leg kick in about 4 different ways using my shin, connecting with my shin. Right, whether you're looking at like a European low kick style where it's like a bunt, whether a way I learned from Yannick Alves. You can go through and look at your regular soccer kick. You can go through and you look at like where your chop. So your chop, your slap, and your bunt are the 3 main ways. And then there's a of them, right? But and then the one from Yannick's, it's like it basically just like comes up and then right.
Yeah.
And so it's like really weird. But how do we go through and actually train that in a way so that you can feel it? The Haka head bag. If you're going through and working with, those like short types of shots, you need something to give you the feedback. Otherwise, it's too spongy, right?
Yeah.
And for who's listening to this at home, do not just get something and start beating your hands against it. Getting proper instruction and like talk to David, talk to Dale, talk to Dane, get a proper program or you're going to hate your life, because there's recovery ways and it works really well. But if you don't do them, your hands are going to be sore and probably permanently damaged.
Yeah. Yeah. That was one of the things that like, like the traditional arts that I kind of grew up in, most people don't use. Like when you mentioned sand and then you said steel shot, and then you mentioned the type of steel shot, I was really happy because like I'll never forget the YouTube video of the guy punching the river rocks. Like he literally had like a leather bag hanging from his squat rack, and he was just freaking pounding river rocks, like big ass river, and just punching me. He's like, oh, I'm making my hands so strong. I was like, oh my gosh, dude, like you're not gonna ever be able to like hold a pen ever again. Like it's not about how hard you hit or necessarily what you hit. But you definitely have to have a method, and you definitely need to have jiao. You have to have ditta jiao. You can't just smash your hands, and then try to do it and train like that at any sort of regular pace, right? Most of my students and myself for most of my life only Hmong and soy. That's all I do. I don't. I sand. I like more for the fingers. But the steel shot you're talking about, I love that really fine, hard steel shot. Not the big marbly kind where you're like that's not going to move. You're going to break yourself on that, right?
So for anyone listening at home, the reason you don't want to use like the larger ball bearings and larger stones is we're trying to avoid what's referred to as point loading, right? So want to point load and actually get just this spot. I want to go through and work the whole thing. And like, it doesn't actually, like if you do it right, you will build up conditioning pretty quickly. There's a video over on Fugitive Fitness. So my Bruce Wayne job, I work in an industrial setting, and I can take my guastao or my back fist, and I can go through and take it against the structural I-beam, right, like for a building, and bang there,
Mhm.
and you can hear it
Ding.
over and over and over. Now,
Mhm.
I did not stop doing that. You
Right.
build up to
Yeah.
by don't just go and start doing it, but it's something that you can get to, and it's very doable. That took a little over a year to be able to do. But
Totally.
the analogy that I use for people, and I'm interested how you explain it, is I explain that conditioning your striking surfaces, you sound like you're from like Minnesota, Wisconsin, something like that.
Wisconsin.
Okay, so in the U.S., what they think Canadian accents sound like. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
Hose up there, eh?
Right. So when you're going through and making a snowball into a ball of ice is the analogy that I use. So you start with snow and you pack it lightly, and then you slowly put pressure and heat
I like that.
and angles and get this to come together, and you solidify it. If at any point you put too much pressure in too early, or you put it too much on one point, it will crumble and it will break. This thing will turn into a solid ball of ice, and that works perfectly unless you put too much pressure too fast on one spot, and then it doesn't.
Freaking well said. I honestly, that's like some of the best. That's such a great description of impact conditioning. Love that. Love that. I mean, gosh, that hits every single part of how you get yourself into impact conditioning. Because like, yeah, one of the issues is it's either too light or it's too hard. Like that's really like the Goldilocks issue that people have with impact conditioning, because they want to be tough now, and so they freaking blow themselves out. They don't follow a program that is progressive, that uses dipped agile, that uses the herbs that help you heal. Yeah, and or it's too soft, and they sit there and they'll just, and that's not to say that soft training doesn't have its place, but if it's only soft training and it never progresses, then the impact conditioning will only be a little bit, so yeah, I think oh gosh, that was awesome. I can't wait to use that again. That was freaking great. And the pinpoint that we're talking about is so right on.
So the way that I approach it. So the two main guides that I've had are my closed door Sifu, who's a guy named Rob, who stays very much under the radar and off the internet for a variety of reasons. And he's good enough that I travel 18 hours round trip to go see him. I'm going to go see him tomorrow, actually.
Awesome.
And a Mantic guy's name is Dale Dugas. And that's who I get almost all my jow from.
Yeah.
And Dale is the closest thing to the comic book villain Kingpin I've met in real life. Here, I'd heard Dale say a lot of things, and I was just like, I'll be there. I'll just show up. And I did. So he was like, oh yeah, I hit this 70-pound bag full of lead shot. That's how I conditioned my hands. It was there, front and center, covered in jow, like it got used daily, because he does. Yeah. Right. And so going through and kind of following the programs, he's been a great guide. And his jow is really, really good. I've used his almost exclusively. And I have 18 gallons of jow brewing in carboys.
That's a lot. I think I've got
big ones for making gallons.
That's a lot. Yeah, I think I've got 5. I think I only have like 5 in my basement that's been sitting since 2016, and that's the jow that I use in my gym. That's the jow that I use. Oh, that's for myself. That's the jow that I sell to people. So when people buy jow through Rattan Ring, I've had the same batch that I started from 2016. I went and got all my herbs in San Francisco. I was training with a teacher out there, and we would always go to the same shop in Chinatown, and he'd look over my recipe and explain it all to me, break it down, because I don't speak Chinese. And yeah, so I've got 5 gallons. You have 18 gallons. hell yeah, you're set for life, and then everyone else is now too.
I have Lotus Palm from that I did in April, and I got some Channing Tong and some Summerdale Ghost Hands that's been brewing for a month. I'll probably let him get 3 years old or something like that. There's no rush, right? Because I got good.
Depending on how you made it or whatever, some teachers would tell you, and Dale will probably explain it better than I could. He's got more expertise in that realm. But there are some jows that you can actually start using as early as 3 months or 6, something along those lines, depending on how it's prepared. I know that I've heard that before, but I think it has something to do with the way that the herbs are prepared. I think there's some steaming involved that helps break it down and help get the active ingredients to kind of be permeate into the alcohol faster or something. But yeah, man, 18 gallons, awesome.
In chemistry, and so your big movers are your T's: time, temperature, and turbulence. So when you go through and you make your batch, because you go through and like you use a mixture of alcohol and water, and depending on whose jow you're doing and blah blah blah. So it's time, temperature, and turbulence, right? When you go through and increase temperature to a certain point, you don't want to denature the proteins and stuff like that. You can decrease the time. When you go through and increase the amount of turbulence, you go through and you decrease the time that's required, and then surface area is the other one, right? So you go through and take your
smaller, chopping them up smaller, creating greater surface area so it breaks down faster.
Get a Vitamixer and turn it to dust.
There you go.
Turn it to dust. There are some herbs in there that are almost like there's some herbs in there that are almost like rocks, and you'll want to go know what they are and bust those up separately with a hammer. But if you really want to go through and make your jow fast, you will go through and turn all your herbs to dust. You'll put it into either a carboy or some type of stainless steel. Glass is better because you're not going to leach any chromium or anything like that, which may or may not be an issue. So you're going to take all your stuff, you're going to turn it to dust, you're going to put it in there, you're going to use water that is hot enough to make tea that is distilled. And the reason is because that distilled water will leach everything out because there is more room, right? More to dissolve. And then you're going to put that on a magnetic stirrer that is big enough, and you'll keep that thing stirring and seal it, right? So it will do its thing. It will do that. And once it gets to a certain point, and if you have the ability to actually keep something pressurized without the lids popping off, whatever your container is will allow that. You go through and you add your ethanol, your 200 proof or 198 proof, and you put it in there. Leave that thing on a magnetic stirrer for a while, and so you have increased surface area, time, temperature, and turbulence, and you can get a full strength jow a lot sooner. You don't want to keep adding heat to it because then you kind of doing something else. But that's how you can get that stronger.
Yeah, that's
but
awesome.
For me, buy my stuff by the gallon from Dale right now. Really.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
So there's a training partner I have. I call him Angry Dave. Angry Dave is about 5'3", and is one of the most terrifying people I've met in my entire life. He was running around with Frank Kent Shamrock back in the day. He is a decorated professional martial arts fighter and a jail guard. And he has I grew up doing judo, was living.
Oh, there you are.
Washington. What's that?
I lost you there for a second.
So Dave grew up doing judo. He was living on the streets. He was looked in the window of a bar and he was watching some MMA guy on top of another guy beating the hell out of him, and he thought I could do that for money. And so start. So one of the things that he talks about is the 3 partners, which he got from the Shamrocks down at the Lion's Den back in the day. You need somebody that you can beat. You need somebody that is your frenemy and somebody that can beat you. And I use that analogy for conditioning as well, right? So when I'm going through and hitting, we go through and we look at, I have that Lohan limb bag, right? So it is skinny and lighter, and I will go through just shoot, right? and I'll set through and I set right in the right time, and I'm going to dig deep all the way through and in and out, right? So there's that pluck, right? So I can get that. Now it provides enough that I need to set, but my focus is speed. I'm going to blast right through that thing. So we have another one that we call the triad teardrop, which is designed with a cone shape, and as it comes up, so when you hit, you can plunge deep into it.
Nice.
So it's kind of like hitting like mud, right? Where just right, and so it slows you down like that. So it is the thing that is really easy for me to hit, and I can go through and learn to set and work at speed. I have that thing that is kind of right on my level. So for me, that would be, say, the triad body bag. I can go through, I can step, and I can hit that, and that's about where I'm at. It goes back and forth. Sometimes I'll still kind of like, it teaches me a few things, right? Where I'm like, I gotta be better on my alignment, right? Like I came up like this, and I should have been coming in like this, right? Right? I'll like jack your finger up a little bit. Okay. Right. So I have that one where we're kind of back and forth. And then I have the Haka head bag, which is the size of a gourd or a squaw and weighs 60 pounds of steel shot, and it is incredibly dense, in which I need to go through and just shoot. And so it is harder than I am. I'll also use, the I-beams and stuff like that, where I'll go through and I'll tap.
Yeah.
Right? And I have this thing that's way harder than me, this thing that's way softer than me, this thing that's on my level. And I use that when I'm approaching my conditioning, my hands, when I'm going through with my training partners. Am I working on new shit? Right? Am I kind of like, okay, this is some stuff that I'm kind of I want to, or am I just throwing I'm throwing something at someone just to see how it gets shut down and go back to the drawing board, right? And so I use that approach when I'm conditioning as well. So do you also do like the tapping on I-beams and steel blocks?
Yeah. So like when I for the lighter stuff, so here's just an example, because I like hitting all kinds of things. But like when I teach beginners, I teach them how to sink. And so the first thing they learn how to do is just let their hand, by dropping their weight from their chest to their waist. That's it. That's all they get to do. And so for the longest time, they just learned a simple iron palm technique of learning how to drop their center of gravity from their chest to their hips. And every time they raise their hand, they learn to lift their center of gravity from their hips to their chest, and then boom, boom. And then over time, you're able to, for some people, that weight that they're dropping is maybe the weight of a baseball at first. Boom. You drop the baseball, that's what it would feel like. Over time, that baseball gets heavier and harder and heavier and heavier and heavier. And as time goes on, when they drop their weight, boom, it really it creates a much more force. And so that's just a method, right? Starting with the tapping, and then eventually learning to then really sink your body, and then allow that gravity to do damage. And so when it comes to impact conditioning, it'll start light with the fingertips and the hands with that simple technique. When it comes to the fist, I just tell people, just start with, a packed fist, not make a fist. Pack the fist. Then start hitting something, once the knuckles and everything is really tight. And then we'll start tapping, and then we'll do like, so I'll take them through an undulating pattern of intensity. So starting with tapping, and then we'll do a time where it's harder, and then a handful where it's everything. You hit it as hard as you can, and then come back down. So like, just like you're PRing on some sort of weightlifting thing, it's like, no, you're not gonna lift your PR every single time you go into the gym, right? Every once in a while, you go full on and you give it everything you got. But you can't do that unless you have hours and hours and hours, or at least some level base training of that light and medium smashing. Because as that builds up, that increases the thickness and the fortitude of the joint specifically. A lot of times when people are doing iron palm specifically, they'll blow out the middle joints because they're hitting it way too damn hard, or they're splaying their fingers out too much. and they're not cupping. So yeah, I definitely love the way that you're talking about the person that you can be, the person that can push you, and the person that can beat you. I think that's a fantastic analogy for how to improve your impact conditioning. But the frequency is really important. Like you can't smash things all the time. It has to be a less frequent, light and medium intensity, more frequent.
With my Sifu raw. So the style that I do is boxing trele flip. And he's like, when I started working with him, he said, "Yeah, you can hit the pillows if you want to." He said, "It's not going to translate." He said, "And the depth of that chop toy." He said, whatever, like waste your time. Go through. You need you need hang bags, and kind of that old Polo Young and Bloodsport, right? Brick, don't hit. And a lot of my conditioning, my focus has been going through and generating that force on a horizontal plane, and going through and getting ready to fire something from like in meat space with something with hair and a heartbeat. And so going through and doing that. And so the reason we started doing these bags, and so like they didn't exist. I needed something that was a good hang bag. There's wall bags. Okay, but I can't cut an angle on it.
Nope.
I needed something that was going to work. And then what we had done was like, okay, well, for the majority of people, the limiting factor in how much bare knuckle conditioning they do is their skin. So when you get these, right, if you get a, like, well, why don't you just use a leather heavy bag or a vinyl heavy bag? It sticks to your skin.
Rips the skin off.
Someone's like, yeah. So if I go through and I put on a set of like those yellow rubber gloves for the kitchen, like you wash dishes with,
yeah,
like your mom does,
yeah,
and put it against your dish, you're going to be happy with it. You're going to be unhappy, right?
Yeah.
And so the canvas bags, they go through and they tear, right, and they scrape.
Yeah.
But do this. So it's like, well, we need something strong enough, so we used a liner, in which the second gen actually have a second gen or 1000D nylon canvas or nylon Cordura, but on the outside we have weapons grade satin. And the reason is it creates a burnishing of the knuckles. You don't scrape yourself on it; it creates this burnishing. It's awesome. And thicken that skin up, and how do we get that structure to go through an upgrade without having being the limitation being tearing my skin? Because now I need to take a week or so off.
Yeah.
So what we're going through and using that, and a combination of I use a mixture of tea tree oil and clove oil over top of the contact surfaces. So it's kind of good to see, but it's like this skin right here. It's like leather.
Yeah.
Right. It's not gross. It's just thick, like cowhide.
Like your fingers get when you're playing a guitar.
Yeah.
You know, that skin just gets thicker.
The body bags, I think there's one left in stock. We're doing another run of them for the person in the comments there. Just move. So going through and looking at it, when I went through on a deep dive, like, well, how are people thickening their skin? Bro, I found everything from guys going through and soaking their hands in diesel fuel, formaldehyde, right? And the difference between sheep piss and horse piss, and which was like giving you a better result. So the least weird one was actually corned beef brine, right? Like that was the one that was least weird, or the least weird, right? It's like, well, we'll try to accomplish this. And so we went through and did the satin on the outside so people could go through and get those bones so it wouldn't chew up their hands. And so that we could actually make that happen. With a lot of like the karate guys and stuff like that, they hit the makawara that's wrapped in rope, or the guy punching the sand.
My headphones just died. I'm gonna drop another in. Hold on a second. Maybe it'll work. Maybe it'll talk. Let me see. Give me 1 second.
Sure. I'll be right back. How's that? Hey, David.
Let's do it. All right, fixed.
Yes. Limiting factor was it was the skin. So how do we go through to kind of accomplish that? And how do we go through and get ourselves back where we're able to go through and get the work in? And we found that the bags just weren't there. And one of the things I find interesting about Kung Fu, and I mean, especially the Choi Light Foot, is there is, 18, 20 different solo training devices. Some of them are really big, and some of them are complex and reactive, right? So I showed you, I'm working on a base that I can go through and chase it down. But there's ways.
Yeah, that thing is so cool, man. I'm super impressed. Like that, but I'm really excited about that because if you develop that, I guarantee you, you're able to connect that to some sort of Wing Chun dummy or something. Like people are gonna go nuts because being able to move, because like they have that big wooden rack that they put it on and it vibrates, which is super cool. It gives it some action, but being able to cut and turn, I think would be really awesome. And that prototype you got going on, it looks really cool.
Well, so one of my big things that I got from Cali is I get to so one of the things I got from Cali was moving to that lead side and continuing to move to that lead side. And so you look at like a lot of people are doing their time on that Mok Jung. Well, why are you back to the line of pressure repeatedly?
Mm-hmm.
If you can't go past that wall, you can't, right? You're basically agreeing to stay in front. If I've gone through and I've got over to one side and I'm able to go through and so Canal's values is I want to go through and get out of your Xbox zone. I want to move over to Doritos or Big Gulp, right? Go through and keep you in my Xbox. I move to Doritos and Big Gulp, and I'm going to go through, and I got easy work now because in your workspace, I'm not where you're good, and I can fight half your body. But when we start going through and looking at a lot of these solo training devices, we need to look at what it is that we are teaching ourselves to do. Am I teaching myself to cross back into the line of pressure? Why?
Mm-hmm.
For me, going through like looking at this base that I'm setting up, even when I'm going to run it down, there are ways that I can go through and make it so that as I start putting pressure, that it will move to one side or the other predictably, right? Or where we can go through and start using it where there's that kind of coming in and there's that surge, that push and pull, and as it comes back in, pivot, and then kind of thing down. And I mean, quite frankly, if I think that you're really good, I'm gonna shake the shit right out of you, right? And I'm going like this, and then I'm gonna go through as you're working to kind of stay stabilized. And so going to have that just shaking the shit out of something as you're moving around and finding your stuff. For me, I haven't seen it exist yet.
No.
So
no, and I freaking love it, man. I love it. I love where your mind is going with this because I can hear I can hear people like the cultists who don't want to see anything change ever. And if if there's any sort of innovation, it's not traditional or it's not real. I can hear the clanging cymbals in the background. But me, I light up with this stuff because to me, a big part of my art is being able to adapt it. And so like, that was like why I loved boxing the first time. I remember boxing and Mantis is generally southpaw. So we lead with our right hand and our right foot. And so when I started boxing, I switched to orthodox because I wanted to empty my cup, right? Anyway, the point of this is, I just lost my train of thought for a second. It's getting late. I'm an old man. My kids are all at home. Where's Dad? So no, the point was the innovation and hearing people freak out about change. Man, I love the fact that you're looking into that. First of all, I can't wait to get a bag. I'm super excited. It's gonna hang right there. I'm pumped. So I'm really looking forward to that. But like, so that's kind of how I got into the rattan ring thing, because originally rattan rings, and I don't have any with me right now, they're really thin. And like you buy something on Amazon, you buy it off eBay, um, and that's how I started, right? Like I started with the really thin rattan rings, and they're okay. If you get a good, if you're lucky enough to get a good one, it's really thick and has some heft to it. But that's why I built the Emperor ring, because the Emperor ring is thick as all get out. It's heavier, and you can freaking hit it like you hit a mukjang or you know the lohan bag or something like that. And it's something that I can take with me. I can move, and I can use my footwork. I can use which didn't really, I couldn't do a whole lot with the traditional kung fu boxing things. So yeah, I love the fact that you are on to something with that rotating stand, man. That's going to be really cool.
Well, so whenever somebody goes through, and I always get a kick at a traditionalist, right? Because it's a lot of people that want to go through and stand on business, and I'm like, okay, what is your issue with it, right? Oh well, I mean that's not the way it is. Like, okay, I can tell you that it's making me more capable, and I mean, come try, like I'll show you. If the thing is that you want, that you think that I'm bastardizing your art or whatever, okay, let's open up that can of worms. At what point are we just allowing something to stagnate and getting into where we have generations of people getting worse than the teacher before them, right?
But they're
Where's
really, really great at like towing the line.
evolving the art? It's like, well, I mean, we got to do this. It's like, oh, why? Well, I mean, I only ever saw a master do this. Okay, does that mean that he didn't do this other thing? Had he ever done that other thing? Do you think that there's no value in what I'm doing because it's not your idea, right? Or somehow using your Sifu and his Sifu before him to fill this void of the father that you have? What exactly that your issue is? Oh, well, I mean, it's not traditional. It's like, here's the thing: come and fight me, and we'll see if what I'm doing is effective. Because for my big issues is whenever I see people going like, oh, we're doing kung fu. Okay, cool. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, here's two 15-year students sparring. Okay, I can't wait for this. And it looks like two guys with a month or two of kickboxing at the YMCA sparring. How come your art doesn't look the way it's supposed to?
Yeah.
Right? Why, when you're doing this, that this is not effective? Why does your art not look like what you're training? Right? Why?
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that a lot of that has to do with poor training methodologies. Okay, well, how do we go through and input and start using things like double-ended bags, right? If you want to go through and I go to I mean, in fairness, I learned to speak Spanish in a boxing gym in TJ. So awesome. I went with hazlo así and como se dice estos and to recto, gancho, right, balado, upper, right? And so I use boxing as a way to learn how to speak Spanish. And so
that's awesome.
When I was down at when I traveled around some boxing gyms, I never saw anyone using double-ended bags because it was hard, right? And I will tell you that a double-ended bag teaches, sure, hand speed, sure, time, maybe. It teaches rhythm and resolve in a way that nothing else does. And you walk in the majority of the gyms, you'll see guys like, oh yeah, right. When you go through your pop, pop, boom, and you can get to this thing goes, and you're timing it. Right. And then, and kind of going through and coming back, bang, right, and moving. And it's like, now you have these things. My ability to go through and work that thing. Okay, well, if I'm applying that and I'm able to make it work with my kung fu, did that make me better or worse at kung fu?
Right.
We go through and we look at the use of the foam sticks. There's a fellow I've been corresponding down in Brazil. He's a Choy foot guy. His name is Wagner. And they're going through and using focus mitts and pool noodles and stuff like that to go through and get this. But here's the thing: their drills look like toilet.
Yeah.
Like the art. It doesn't look like shitty boxing. It doesn't look like shitty kickboxing.
Yeah.
see these modern training methods of like, okay, well, when you go through and you look at Kali, when they're doing their flow drills and they go and they fight, does it look like Kali? Yes, it does. Right? Okay. When we go and we a boxer doing his training, when he's fighting, does it look like boxing? Yes or no? Okay, cool. So why is it that we are not seeing this with Kung Fu? Oh, well, I mean, like, it looks different. Doesn't for them.
Too dangerous.
It's not. There are safe ways to train this, and we just have to be willing to do the things to do that.
Totally.
So finding something like, okay, well, can I get a dummy, a facsimile where I can surge this and move into it, and I can cut my angles and kind of work on those ties, right? Can I go through and bring that down and like kind of work for my shuai jiao type of throws? Can I set that up? Can I make this so when I run it down, so that when I'm going to hit my cross check hook to bring this up and on the lips or into somebody's liver, can I go through and hit my Dutch rush or right there like cross check hook, cut down while this person's moving back? Well, how do I get reps on that? Because a heavy bag doesn't swing properly.
Yep.
When we can go through and start using technology so I can get those reps in there by just making training devices, to me, there's something special about that.
Yeah.
Because totally. Even if you put pads, you're not going to like if I blast you in the leg full bore a couple times. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm not going to like it. I'm not going to like it if you do it to me, and it's not constructive.
Yeah.
So to create this stuff. And I think that we need to go through and constantly be innovating. And we see in traditional arts where it's like, wow, but I mean, this isn't in the scrolls. So? I think, no. And I think that that's really one of the things that people need to get over. And the question I always have, and I have it for you, is where is the line between evolving the art and innovating the art that you were being given, which is a gift, and back?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a really good question. And yeah, I couldn't give you a quick answer on it, but I will say this, that like, I think that the wisdom of the ancients is living, and it should cause things to live, and it should cause things to grow, and it is not afraid of being challenged, you know. So traditional arts, I think, that will only grow if they're challenged properly. I think our methods will change if we're challenged, if we allow ourselves to be challenged properly. And I think that that is how we move the art forward. It really does come down to people really caring about fighting well and really defending themselves well and being more dedicated to that than they are any sort of family name or any sort of tradition. So like, to me, like, I want to be a really good fighter. I don't care what brand my gloves are, as long as they protect my hands, right? Like, so Southern Praying Mantis to me is very precious to me. It's like very personal to me. It has taught me a lot in my life, and it's given me a lot. And so I have some loyalty to it as specifically as an art for that reason. But I'm not going to not be a better fighter because I'm going to be dedicated towards some sort of loyalty, right? I don't mind if people say, you don't look like you do Southern Praying Mantis. I don't care. I don't care if they're like, well, that's not in my my teacher didn't teach that in our curriculum. It's like, I don't care. I saw a move in a form that did this. That looks like an underhook to me. So now I'm wrestling. So that's it. Like, my teacher says there's a minimum of 3 applications for every technique. So if I see a technique that maybe the application isn't something that I come in contact very often, but there is an application that it looks like that I do all the time, damn it, I'll choose the one that's going to work, the one that I do all the time. So I think a lot of you kind of touched on this before, is that like, so a lot of the traditional arts, and there's some cool YouTube video, a guy that talks about how the on guard positions for some of the traditional arts were basically holding weapons. And I think the one that I remember the most was like Xing Yi, where he's holding his hands a certain way, and he's like, well, this is just holding a pole. So we didn't change anything. So if you fought with a staff or a spear and you fought empty-handed, they didn't change that because that was right for their context. And I think for us, Like for me, like I don't stand like this. Like if I do on guard position with me and my training partner, I don't hold beggar's hand. I put my knuckles up. That's it. I may hold them wide if I'm in the mood for you to come down the center line. I might hold them a little bit closer to cover my my vital points. But I don't hold my hands like that anymore. And maybe if I was being, you know, cheeky or something, or if I was like really like baiting somebody, I'd be like, I don't want to fight, and I'd stick my hands out, you know. But yeah, so that's kind of what I think about that. I think the tradition needs to. I don't think it needs to evolve. I think it just needs to live. And I think a lot of people get really stuck in like preserving things exactly how they received it, and not living by the letter of the law and not the spirit of the law. And I think the spirit of the law is really where you see innovation. You see people not being afraid of like building shit and being like, okay, well, I really want to train by myself and I want to do impact conditioning. So I'm going to freaking design something better than what was before, so that I can get more out of it. And I think that's where tradition needs to go. We need to have our eyes on that without losing the respect and the honor of the past or knowing where we came from. But we definitely, like, there's got to be new stuff ahead.
I think that we need to look at the context, right? We talked about the context that these arts were in before, right? The example of, you know, Haka systems, right? I mean, these are small people in streets, right? We're looking at the Red Bull Wing Chun. It's like basically for bouncers on riverboats that were with gambling prostitutes, right? So we're looking at that. But with that said, there's certain things that that these arts weren't exposed to. And we touched on disruptive technology. I give the example of the jab, right? So, okay, well, now we know that the jab exists. We know that your mantis is going to need to come, is likely to come in contact with at least somebody that like has some idea of a jab, right? And I mean, we can go through and look at it where there's guys where they would literally just put this hand out here, right, and mess, or maybe I'm going to go through and I'm going to muffle your rear hand, right? It's going through, and they're, you know, they got their up jab, they got their little screw, right, blah blah blah. So understand how to deal with it. It's a disruptive technology. We go through and we look at the UFC, right? The Muay Thai leg kick. The Muay Thai leg kick was an incredibly disruptive. If you had never seen it in your system, it's like, wow, I mean, that's stupid. I wouldn't do that. It's like, okay, if you've never seen that, that person is going to eat your lunch with a low-scoring technique from a system, and you need to figure out how to deal with that.
Yep.
We go through and we recently just saw it with the calf kick. And I mean, I don't even need to kick you particularly hard in the calf. If you're boxing and you got that wide stance, I'm just going to wait until you're throwing that jab, and I'm just going to pop your front foot. All right, just with top, right? Every time we're just in here, bang.
Boom. Yeah.
We're doing the splits. Well, now all of a sudden that jab goes away. Okay, well, if I see you move, you look like you're gonna step and throw that bomb, right? Boom, right? Well, now there's this thing that you need to learn how to deal with. It's a disruptive technology, and you could say, well, I mean, that's good. Eating a lot, you will lose your, right? We go through and we look at freestyle wrestling. Well, I mean, you know, it was you wouldn't go to the ground because of blah blah blah. Cool. Someone's gonna grab a hold of your leg and dump you on your ass.
Totally.
Right. We're just looking at like a style pickup, right? Like I get in there, just I see him, boom, and it's. I'm not God's gift to wrestling, but I mean, and I'm not a huge. I've gone through and taken power lifters, 265 pound power lifters, got in a clinch, put them up against the wall, and just lifted them up and shown them, dump them, right? So it's like if you aren't willing to go through and advance your art to go through and be like, okay, well, we need to go through and know how to deal with this because we're in the United States. The likelihood that somebody, like everyone is aware of wrestling and they are aware of boxing enough to at least try to throw a jab. And even if it's just, right?
Yeah.
If you're not, like you need to adapt to that, right? You need to be willing to adapt to the leg kick. And so if your art is not willing to do that, you're going to be left behind.
So I wanted to mention one, and this is kind of like a secret favorite of mine as far as disruptive technology. So when I first started training Mantis in Chisao, it was a really kind of common thing that you would do to teach someone how to read pressure correctly. Meaning, like, if the person just disappears and tries to hit you, you learned a hard lesson. And one of the things that we used to do to teach that person how to have the right amount of pressure is that we would slap them across the belly. So you'd have their hands like this, whatever, and then you bang, you just palm them right across the stomach. And it freaking hurts so bad. And like it talk about disruptive, man. Like like you learn that lesson so fast, so that next time that person pushes into you and they try to ghost you and try to hit you, you are able then to cover those vital points and sense it. So slapping is one of my favorites. And I know it sounds like a bitch thing to say, but the burning palm, and I don't mean like anything special. I mean literally just what happens after you do iron palm for a long amount of time. So like so instead of a jab, we used to, in Mantis, we used a wedge hand. So I flick the hand out like this instead of a punch, right? So I'm feeling. And if I can get past, I hit you in the neck or something like that. But it will often turn our fingers so that it slaps across the neck or the face. Or if the punch comes in, instead of just parrying it nicely, I'll burn the person's arm. So it's like it cuts across the arm like a burning hacksaw or something like that. So that's kind of one of my pet favorites as far as disruptive technology, because it's just, it lights you up. It turns a light on in you that like completely disrupts what you want to do next. So bit of a slap now and again on the arms, on the chest, on the legs, on the belly is yeah, it's brutal, but it works.
One of the things that I find interesting is Utah that doesn't know a lot about slapping, and they don't know that there's different slaps.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So like you had talked about, like just taking your fingers loose and slapping somebody and catching them on the eyebrow and I'll melt eye shut. Going through and using the cup, right? Going through and connecting with the pisiform bone, right?
Oh,
if I can break your shit, going through and I'm going to spread this out and I want to create a lot of shock and knock you out, but I don't want to break anything. I'm going to hit here and boom, and creating that here, right? Versus here. And your cup hand, right? And then you have the analogy I use is like I'm laying a steak onto something, all right? And so that, and so kind of, and it creates a very stiff burning sensation when it lands.
Yeah.
And it just kind of connects the thing and you'll leave a full handprint there. But if somebody's not familiar with slapping, they don't know that those things even exist.
Oh my gosh, man!
Right?
Like I always tell my students. I tell my students this. I was like, I got in a handful of fights in middle school and high school, whatever. But I'll never forget. In 7th grade, I talked shit to this girl, Erin, in between classes. I said something to her. I don't think I was being very nice or whatever. I totally deserved it. She turned around and she freaking boom. Oh my God. I could not believe how painful it was. And to this day, like I've been hit many times, and I can count on one hand how many times I was hit so hard that my ancestors felt it. Damn it, that girl taught me a lesson. And then when I started training Mantis and they started playing games where we play this one game where you have to learn how to bring your hands into your center line to protect, and you do it through sensitivity training. So imagine putting your hands out and then I pry your arms open with some tension, and it's your job to stop me from hitting you in the chest, but I'm not going to punch you in the chest. I'm going to open your hands up and I'm going to slap. Okay, and so that's one of the ways that we create that sense of necessity is through not punishment but just consequences. And we use that slap because because it's so memorable. You tonsile the person's arms open, and then bang, you just slap them. And they get really, really good at being able to cut and block because they don't want to feel that freaking pain. So the slap, man, underrated. And obviously you can't use that type of stuff in sport fighting, so that's why you never see it. But man, when it comes to actual like play fighting or like light contact sparring or your flow wrestling or something, you give a little, it can change the game. It can give you time. It also can piss your opponent off if you want to get eyes on it.
Which is very useful. So I wound up applying my trade working as a problem resolution specialist for a doorman. And at the time I weighed, I don't know, maybe 170 pounds, probably close to 160. And I mean, I trained every day, right? Like I'm a lot bigger now than I was then. And so I was known as a talker, right? I was cooler. I could talk to anyone about anything. And they put me up there with this guy that worked beside me that I called Hollywood. And he looked like a gorilla in a suit. And him and I, like, he knew what I could do, but I just talked to people. I'd flirt with the girls to hold up the line, blah, blah, blah. I was a big person. And I remember there was this one night that these kids didn't like that we had this dress code. And they were going on and then blah, blah, blah. And I don't know what they did, but they took a poke at him. And he just took, and he was a bodybuilder. And he just had this thick hand to just start to cry. It was an emotional attack as much as it was a physical thing. And he just, boom. And I was just like, what the? And this kid was like, he was hurt.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, I mean, it was nice to hit him with the heel of the hand, but he came in and just like that snake. And this kid had my man's handprint up there like it was war paint. And I was just like, oh.
So funny.
I mean, I've definitely slap work, right? You go through and you look at hot slapping, and now it's like all of a sudden this person's jarred. And there's certain things where try this with one of your students when you're in your kickboxing class. Move around, right? Mm-hmm. Come in and then just blast them with a shot right here between the top of the sternum and below the collarbone. Just hit them there, and you'll be able to land whatever technique you throw next. It pauses them half a second to a second, and it's
the button.
Slap the same thing. Really do the same thing. It just kind of creates this. And then it lands wild.
Ace, we need to do this again.
Absolutely. What time is it?
It's 10 o'clock here.
Okay. Where can people find you?
All right. So you can find me at David Welther on Instagram, same with Facebook. You can find me also at Rattan Ring Training on Instagram, Rattan Ring Training on YouTube. As far as like rattan rings are concerned, you can buy rings from me through my shop. You can also get Emperor rings. Emperor rings come in 3 different sizes. They're really great for solo training. I also sell steel maces. You can get through my store. I don't know if you can see this one. Yeah.
Is that 30 kgs?
Not 30 pounds.
Okay, I was like, Jesus.
Yeah. I wish. What would that shake out to be?
30 kgs, it would be 66 pounds.
Oh, I'd love to swing a 66-pound mace. I don't even know if I could.
I find a thing that bothers me I got a 20 kg too early, which is about 44 pounds.
Wow.
And the thing that bothers me is my elbows. Like it here, a little bit of the pronator teres, but that tie-in right there, and I was like, oh. And so I got to make sure I really build my volume up. So now I have to be able to, like, if I haven't used it in a while, I got to make sure before I do the next one that for a couple of weeks, do, sets of 50 with the one size. Okay, yeah, I can, and then I'll go up, right? Because I find for me, the mace is all about volume and getting that smoothness of the movement. And I mean, I don't know how it's been for you. I found that nothing is built kind of that V taper, like built the back, and as well as I mean like the lateral delt and stuff like that. Nothing is built that like the Mace. And without getting into be able to just like pick someone up and throw them across the room, right? Not even getting into the functional side, just from the bodybuilding side, as far as creating that V taper. For me, nothing's really the way the Mace has, but it seems to really favor volume for me.
Yeah, and I think for me, like, I agree. Like, because it's not my body weight, then the volume is the way to go without question. I started doing a lot of single arms with the 10-pound, 10, 15-pound Mace, a lot of single arm 360s when I started getting a lot of that tension. I went lighter and I did just a lot more volume and I just kept that motion smooth. But I used to, I used to get the elbow just right above here, that tension, that pain. It eventually went away. But every time I would up in weight and I tried to do any sort of volume with it, it would come back. And so I just had to make sure that I was going up at a reasonable pace.
Responsibly. We found like going through and putting the jowl and stuff like that on there and just kind of like, okay, I'm going to go through and do it. And I've also found like doing shorter sets, right, just more frequently. So with the Fugitive Fitness, one of the adages I have is, or one of the mantras is, frequency is more important than duration. So
I love that.
I do, the reality of it is there's some of my workouts that like I have a workout that's less than 5 minutes that will leave you gasping.
I believe it.
And it's just awesome. Now, do I do that one every day? No, it's when I only have 5 minutes to train. That's what I do, right? But a lot of my 20 to 30 minutes, and my rest period is doing social media stuff because I have to, right? I mean, that's the reality of it, is I have to do it, right? So going through, and for me, for the Gata or the MaceBell, I see a lot of people doing these long flow like dance routines, and I mean I love that for them. I just don't think that the term I use is we're shoehorning, right? So I can do bicep curls and side bends with a kettlebell. That's not the point, right? That's not what it really brings to bear, right? And what is it that I'm able to leverage as far as time? And so I've found there's 2.5 exercises that are really worth a damn for me with the Mace. Barbarian squats, I don't really care. The thing I mean, it's really just a cast, right? Some people call it a grave digger. There's the 360 and the 10 and 2, and I mean, for me, it's really more like an 11 and 1.
Pulling it more narrow, steeper angle.
And so for me, the big reason I do is because I want, and I'm interested how you kind of teach it, but my big thing is I really want to go through and come to the belt buckle as I'm doing this. So like I see a lot of people where they're up here and they're just kind of like in this position. My issue with that is once you lose control, you don't really have a reset, where I go through and bring this around and around at full range, and then tossing that up and bring And so for me,
your feet are flat. So if your feet are flat and you're not doing this, okay, I call that the strict swing. So what you're describing right now is what I call the strict swing. The strict swing is that your feet are planted shoulder width apart, and then you pull the 360, your grip all the way down to your belly, before you cast again.
Okay.
So I do 360s a handful of different ways. So that is what I call the strict. Then there's the pedal swing, is when you start rocking side to side to help you cast when you start getting fatigued, or if you have a heavier weight than you're not necessarily used to. I have no problem with that. Like you're getting some more dynamic action in there. But you'll notice if you do a strict swing the way you're describing it, with your feet flat, then you're not pedaling, and you're just rotating, you're going to get a lot more core activation and a lot more of anti-rotational resistance. And that's what I really like about the steel mace, is the anti-rotational. It's like something's trying to take me, and I'm going to stay. And that's why I really like that strict swing. The ones where you float at the chest and you come around and you don't pull all the way down, it gives you more time under tension. And the more time under tension that you have is more going to stress out your muscular endurance. And that can be beneficial for its own reasons. So the strict swing has a great cast. I especially like it when you're using heavier MaceBells because the cast really hits those upper pecs, hits the front of the delts as you lift. So pulling down, receiving from the cast, and then lifting back up is all going to engage that here. Whereas if you float and you don't pull all the way down and you keep it here, you're maintaining most of the resistance in your core and the anti-rotational part of it. And so sometimes people will pedal their feet, and I think that's fine. Sometimes they'll float, but you said it earlier when we were talking, as long as you know why you're doing what you're doing, then that's okay, right? If you have a purpose. To me, like when I teach people how to do 360s, I put their face against that wall right there. And I put a 7 or a 10-pound mace and I say, okay, swing this without hitting your elbows against the wall. And that's
Nice.
what I do. Or I'll give them a stick or something, you know? And so they have to bring when they cast, they have to bring that shoulder forward and that elbow has to come up when they cast. Then they have to do the back part where we have our back swing. But it's on the receiving end where most people end up doing some sort of samurai chop. So they do half of a swing and then they come over the top or they pull early. And so I try to get them to get that elbow to come across and then down. And so you have this real nice rotation. If you put them closer to the wall with the mace, that will it will help them on the casting and the receiving side.
What I like about coming to the belt buckle or the cock holster position is that we are coming back to a position of safety, especially in the so like, if it starts to go bad, you pull it down, right? And so it's a place where we're very, very stable. I also like that it starts to really kind of, it engages me all through there. Getting kind of a little bit of serratus, getting more lat and stuff like that. And I mean, for me to like pull over, right, I find it translates really well. And then later on, I mean, if somebody's, as we talked about earlier with muscle ups, one of the big issues is injuries come because people are challenging themselves in positions that they are unstable in, right? So if I'm going through, and this is only a couple kilos or about 25, 26 pounds, like if for me, I'm used to coming down here, and then doesn't mean that I can't go through and get up here, but if stuff starts, I know where my safety is. And for me, I found we need to give them a kind of a position to get out of, a position of safety. So drills essentially.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I think the strict swing is where I start and it's where it ends. Everything else in between is kind of like it's like if you think about like a clean and jerk, it has like a deadlift in it. It's got the high pull, you know, it's got the rack position and the squat. And so you've kind of got you're thin slicing this exercise. So I'll have people like literally just practice the backswing, and they'll hold the hands back here and they'll just learn how to turn their waist. So some people will pedal their feet to create that motion. I like to teach people to turn their waist because that's part of the strict swing. And I'll thin slice that skill just there. It's hard to thin slice casting and receiving, but what I will do is I'll get them to a little bit of a hollow body and then tighten their core, and then they'll float the arms without pulling all the way down so they can feel what the resistance is like. But again, it's just like thin slicing the exercise for only specific attributes that I'm trying to glean from it. So that's kind of like, if I see somebody's got like a certain weakness, then like I'll prescribe a certain regression or progression or a different variation of the skill to kind of help them along. But like, the strict swing is great. It's like, it's the bread and butter. It's the beginning and end of the steel mace.
I got a chance to from a gal, her name is Luciana down in Mexicali. I got a chance to work with some of the clubs, and I actually I don't enjoy the heavy clubs. I enjoy them for 15 pounds or so, to really be able to go through and learn that proprioception to kind of come around. And I really
Hmm.
I like using the clubs for that. Um, and I think that they shine and really getting that articulation of the scap, um, and kind of really mobilizing the scap, where like I have a lighter mace that I'll go through, and I mean I can go through and make that happen, right? Um, but I find that if I had to pick just one, I enjoy the longer cycle times of the mace. I find it gentler, where going through and working with the clubs, I find that there's a little more tugging. Um,
Yeah. A little, yes, I think so too. Yeah.
and I go through and I see, because I study movement, right? So like when I go through and I see something that's, especially like the rotator cuff, a ball and socket joint, like that type of jerking is something that we really kind of want to avoid.
Yeah.
Um, and like the way that I go through and I teach to do one-handed mace swings is you start with something that's light and you do your two hands, and then you come back to your belt buckle position, and you're
Hmm.
just through and having you just kind of have that reminder in between each time.
Yeah.
And then going through, and you can look at doing your alternate 10 and 2s and stuff like that. But I found that that's really the way that I get that.
Yeah.
Um, I find that I can't get the same type of, like with the club belt, as you're kind of coming around getting that path. I find it doesn't work as well for me with the mace,
Yeah.
where the offers that shorter portion and allows a little more articulation of the club. But I don't find that I really need to. I typically will do that with like 6 kgs, so about 15 pounds,
Yep.
for club, and just kind of really get that tracking the way that I want it to. But I really enjoy the mace a lot more, just for that
Yeah.
longer, smoother.
Ace, we should just do one specifically about the mace, because you and I think it would be really fun to kind of go back and forth and actually play with the mace. I think that would be really cool. And I think we could probably fill up just the same amount of time and give people some really good details, um, just on mace training. I think this has been awesome just to talk with you and talk shop, especially Kung Fu stuff. Like, I don't really get a chance to talk to very many people about kind of like that background and really talk shop about that. But I'd love to do it in the future if you're up for it, and really just kind of dig in and really kind of share some of the skills with people and some of the cues that, because I mean, some of the stuff that you're dropping, man, like let's go, let's do it again.
Well, I travel the U.S. all the time. I'll just show up at your
Let's
gym. Just
go.
just like like, can I sleep on your floor? It'll be a great
Hey,
time.
I have a spare room in my
Work.
gym, dude. You swing through Madison, Wisconsin, you have a place to stay.
I appreciate
Yeah, I
that.
have the gym has a spot.
I appreciate that. Do you have any like, so we had just released a kind of an instructional on kind of the gata, enter the gata, where we really get into, hey, here's the 2.5 exercise we like, here's the
Yeah.
progression doing one-handed. Do you have a mace bell thing that you like to do, and
I,
how is it like because I'm very, I do this for this,
mm-hmm.
and then I just get into like, oh, for this thing, that like I do something else for that
Yep.
because this works better for me. So
Yeah. So like I kind of
routine.
got into, yeah. So I have two things. One, the main thing that I have is a 2-week online tutorial, and it literally drops like every day, gives you exercises that you can do, and it kind of gives you a mindfulness meditation at the end, done by Ninja Yachty, the American Ninja Warrior, who's a coach at our gym. So she's awesome. And she always kind of like gives you tidbits of wisdom at the end of the workout. But it's pretty, I take 10 skills. I kind of created 10 skills that I like, and I can chain them together. And that's the Steel Mace 360 is kind of like the heart and soul of it all. But then things kind of build out from there. And so I do incorporate presses and curls and a handful of other types of movements, because sometimes people only have a mace bell. They don't have dumbbells, they don't have kettlebells. And so I kind of give them the opportunity. And all of the skills that I've kind of like grouped together, they're all useful for martial arts. And that's kind of why I do the steel mace the way that I do it, is I chain a lot of these skills. So let me give an example. I don't even know if you can see me. So this is we call this the flare curl, and it rotates like this. And then you can switch sides.
What are
this
you
just gets it moving.
accomplished with it?
And
Like,
then
what's the
rotate.
point with
Yeah,
the?
so the grip strength. So the grip strength.
Okay.
And the rotational strength. So rotate, park it, rotate back.
That's nice.
Seatbelt. Rotate, park it. Now from here, this is like me loading a punch. So just like I rotate to throw a cross, I rotate for champion press. Underhook curl, straight press, hinge, 360, drop it, curl again, 360. Because it uses heavier weights, and you can't do some of those movements with a light mace. It has to be heavy. It has to create that pull on your arm when it swings. And so I have a 2-week program. It drips new skills every day. You get to redo some of the old skills. I believe that there's like tracking forms. You can track your workouts and stuff. It's a good starter program for anybody who wants to get into the mace, but wants to use it more specifically for training martial arts. I don't take the mace and like teach you how to hit anybody with it, but for me, the way that I created the program is that it's going to give you some auxiliary skills with the mace that I think will be more beneficial for combat arts training. So I have a 2-week version of that. I also have a steel mace flow called a Nautilus flow, the dancing bit that you were talking about before. I got into that, the steel mace flow, because of weapons. I train staff and sword and a number of other weapons, and I completely understand why they do what they do. They took that steel mace, they do it with yoga, they borrowed a ton from martial arts in order to make that system. And so I kind of got connected with flowing with the mace, because have you ever swung a guandao before?
No,
Guandao is a big staff with a freaking like 10-pound blade at the end of it. And so you start moving that stuff around, it feels like a mace. And so like when I learned about heavy mace swinging, it like immediately I attached to it because of traditional Shaolin weapons and things like that. And so I created my system for people like me, for people who like martial arts, that like weapons, and that may very well have handled them. And when they pick up a mace, they go, oh, that kind of feels familiar. Kind of feels like a sword, or it kind of feels like this weapon or that weapon. And so my 2-week program kind of will scratch that itch for anybody who wants to get familiar with the mace, but kind of is more wanting to use it for strengthening themselves for combat arts.
one of the things I find interesting is when you go through and you look at where the gata came from. And I mean, there's some version of
Taking it with me.
really.
Keep going. I just need to get a power bank. My phone's about to die.
We wind up seeing some version of those being used from India to Iran, and I find that really interesting, and it's so prolific within the Indian culture as a sign of strength and physical prowess and power, that you'll often see gods depicted holding them.
Yeah, right.
And
Hanuman.
we wind up going through and hearing, stories about the great Gamma that apparently would swing one that was like 88 pounds 1,000 times a day. I was swinging a 44-pound one. He didn't swing an 88-pound one 1,000 times a day. That's not a thing because like Indians are just not that big of people to begin with. He might have been able to swing it 100 times, but like they're just not that big of people. But going through and looking at the old footage of guys like Carl Gotch going through and swinging them, wild, really, really wild. But I found with kettlebells, I go through and I like sets of 6 and under for things. Where I find with the mace, like I want to be doing, 20 is my set at least, right? Like I want sets that are at least 20 reps. I find that that's where I really like for the mace. And just getting that volume, and I enjoy the feeling of the stretching of the intercostals and, going that fascial sling system. I find that that's where it really shines for me. I found the club, smaller club, it's really just an articulation of the shoulder. And if I'm going through and kind of feeling, I want to warm up, or I really kind of want to work that, I'll go through and use the club as a warm up or a cool down, or I kind of feel that. But I find I don't go to the club for a workout as much as it's a loaded mobility tool for me. Where the mace, taking a mace and pairing it, like one of my favorites is going, like one of my Need for Speed workouts. Try this one if you want tomorrow, or make your class do it. So the mace that you normally swing, that you swing comfortably, take that one, set it out, go through, drop down, and do perfect form push-ups as fast as you can until you feel like you hit mud, and you'll feel yourself noticeably start to slow. For me, that happens at about 30 or 32, and then I'll go through another 5 or so, right? Like kind of starting at the top, loading, boom, right? And I mean like perfect form push-ups, right? I'll do another 5, and then I go through and I hit my in and out squats. So like a speed squat, air squat, legs going in and out.
Popping your feet in and out. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I like them because it's an agility thing. And then for a fighting standpoint, it allows me to work on, like I'm in there, I'm moving, I'm able to come up and change that level. So I just can come out, right? And so I'll match the number I did for push-ups. And then I finish off with, I take the mace, I toss it up, and I do 360s in each direction for the number of push-ups I did.
Oh,
that will
sweet. Love that.
5. And I recommend taking 5 breaths in between each set. Like in between your push-ups, take 5 breaths, then do your squat, then do your 360s, set it down, do your 360 on the other side, 5 breaths in between. That'll take about 5 minutes, and you will hit everything.
Yeah.
Everything.
That's awesome, dude. I love that.
And so for me, it's really about that mace hits a lot more stuff, right? So you go through and you look at like the Need for Speed workouts, Quick and the Dead that Pavel has to do, right? In his book, snatches, getting that big range of motion. For me, I come down on the belt buckle and I get that big range of motion. Going at the kettlebell complex where I'm using it shorter, but I still try to get that bigger range of motion so that I'm tossing this and I'm hitting more stuff. And going through and trying to find those things that will give me the biggest bang for the buck. Because as I'm getting closer to 96 and further away from 26, it's a function, right? Like I work full time with Bruce Wayne job. This last month, I mean, there's sometimes I was working, more than 80 hours a week. And I'm going through and running a business, right? So it's like, what is my time like? And so to be able to go through, can I get a good workout in 15 minutes? You absolutely can if you do it.
Yeah. And
because I mean, you're also getting closer and closer to 96 and further from 26. I have more gray hair than you easily. So how is it that you have managed to not get fat as shit with each passing year?
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. It's a good question. Honestly, man, like I live a lifestyle that I think most people can't live. I mean, as a gym owner and a martial arts coach, I move a lot. I move way more than most people. So like, I'm not super cut, but I'll tell you this, like my training, um, yeah, that's what it is. It's like I train all the time, almost every day, and so I move so much that at 46, turning 47 next month, um, yeah, I'm 165 pounds. I was, and and I'm more muscle now than I was when I was 165 pounds at 17, right? Um, I think that you said something really great earlier. It's just like train smart. You have to do loaded stuff. You have to use weights. You can't overdo it. I think if you overdo it, I mean, and for like, I'm super selfish about a lot of this stuff because for me, I it has to make me better at martial arts. I care a lot less about what I look like as long as I'm able to do crazy shit, right? And so like my fitness regimen is a lot more built around capability than aesthetics, But I mean, if you eat wisely, you won't be a fat piece of shit. I mean, like I eat way more calories than I did when I was younger because I train. My output is so great now. Granted, what I eat now is very different. My wife will tell you that. So, yeah, man, like I don't have any secret sauce. Do what you love. Um, uh, don't be at the same time, like don't be controlled by your urges. Like that's one of the things that's really important to me is like anytime I come in contact with something in my life that controls me, whether it's like my need for ibuprofen or smoking cigars or chewing tobacco when I was younger or whatever, like I just kind of nip that all in the bud eventually. I climb that next hill, and that's how I try to live a healthy lifestyle.
Well,
It's one step at a time.
after the nickels and dimes, right? The dollars take care of themselves, right? So if you're going through and eating trash, um, we shouldn't expect that we feel like trash when we look like trash, right? And for me, the my Bruce Wayne job involves me having to work shift work, and for me, it's just about creating structure to eating, right? Because otherwise, 3 in the morning rolls around and you're kind of bored. So why not have chocolate covered chicken wings? You know, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Right? Why would I not go through and do that? And going through and just adding structure to your eating. So there's a lot of people where if they're going to sit down in front of the TV, I mean, they got to have chips, dip, and a glass of Coke or a glass of rye or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we can very, very quickly get in the habit of doing damage, right?
Yeah.
So one of the like a part of that frequency is more important than duration. One of the things that I look at is with diet. So you and I could go out on like I could show up on Saturday and we could stuff our faces with just disgusting stuff. I could be super drunk on beer. We could eat all the food and like work at like a 15,000 calorie day. Your body will only process so much. You will only be able
Mm-hmm.
to process so much calories in that period of time. Sorry, so many calories in that period of time, and the rest will just get flushed out, right? And that is less bad for you than you going through and having an extra 1,000 calories of pop and chips every night.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you had 10,000 more calories like on Saturday than you normally do. Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
that's less bad for me than having an extra 500 calories a day, an extra 1,000 calories a day.
Yeah.
And when we go through looking at, especially for someone that's a shift worker, right, and you can very easily lose track of it. Well, putting on a pound a month for 10 years will sneak up on you, and all of a sudden
Totally.
you look down and your wiener's gone, right? And I mean, anyone that wants a motivation to not get fat, for every 50 pounds overweight you are, you lose an inch off your cock length, right?
Ooh,
You don't when you get
I didn't know that one.
that's not how it works, right? Like women can put on weight and their top does get larger. Not for dudes, it doesn't work like that. Like your tattoos will get larger, but like your dick just gets shorter, right? This is science, right? Like because you wind up building up a pad of fat on your pubic bone where your dick is attached, and it just right, your outie becomes an innie. Not even joking.
Totally. Yeah. No. I hear you.
So when we go through and we look at these habits matter, right? If we are frequently doing things that are bad for us, frequently doing things that are a little bit bad for us, that adds up. If we're frequently doing things that are good for us, that adds up. And we start getting into the cascading effect of habits over years.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And so why is it that alcohol is bad? Well, alcohol lowers our inhibition, causes us to make bad dietary choices, right? So there's that, right? But if we go through and we look at like beer contains plant estrogen, especially pale ale, right? So there are phytoestrogens in pale ale, and there's a reason why guys that drink lots of beer get titties and a fat ass. They start carrying their weight like a woman. There's a reason for it, right? So it's like, or always doing these things in a little bit. It's like, I mean, what's the big deal? Depends if you want to have titties and a fat ass or not. If you're happy with that look. I think that things like, so I think that intermittent fasting, people go through and like that 8 and 16 model, right? I think, or, you know, could be 18 and 6 or kind of however you want to slice that, right? I think that the reason that intermittent fasting works has less to do with the effects on your hormone profile, and kind of like, oh, well, I mean, because you're out of here and you got to get out of this parasympathetic blah, 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 and right, all that. Sure, maybe that's true. The majority of people had structured eating. So it's like, okay, can I go through, right? Like I get to eat between 12 and 8. Okay, I go into the break room for coffee and there's donuts there. Can I have donuts? Is it before 12 or after 12? It's before 12. No, I don't get to have donuts, right? And so for me, right, like the people that I've coached, because the places I've worked have been remote locations, that I've wound up being the impromptu, fitness advisor. So, well, I'm trying to lose weight. Okay, cool. I've had people lose 60 pounds, right? And like all of a sudden they're fit and they're in shape. And oh my God, like how do we do this? Okay, well, cut out starch. Why are you cutting out starch? Oh yeah, I like carbs. No, I just cut out starch because it is calorically dense. And you're not doing enough to need something that is that calorie dense. You can just have a salad and you can put like, oh yeah, but like I don't want to eat salad, no dressing. No one told you not to have salad with no dressing. The tablespoon or 5 tablespoons of dressing is not the problem. It's the 2 baked potatoes that you were having, right? So it's like have all the steak and salad you want, but people are going through and having things that are too calorically dense. So that's why I remove starch. Right? I say, hey, right, no grain. Oh, because I might be gluten intolerant? No, because it's calorically dense, and all the calorie dense stuff that you're eating and snacking on, like potato chips and bagels and like wheat thins and crackers and whatever. I guess you guys say biscuits down in the States. You're not supposed to say cracker anymore. Whatever. It's my word.
I get it.
Right.
I eat crackers.
I'm really good with the bullwhip, like for breaking horses. So I am actually a cracker. So and when we start looking at these things, like, okay, well, a lot of these, right, these baked goods, these donuts, all that, well, it's all high density as far as calories. So it's like, okay, well, you're not allowed to have that. Okay, stop drinking your calories. Okay, well, why? Because they hit really, really fast, and you can very, very quickly consume a lot more than you realize.
Yep.
I worked with a guy who was a nearly Olympic level wrestler, right? Was like an Olympic hopeful, and he would drink 10 to 12 cans of Coca-Cola per 12 hours.
Ooh.
And this guy's body fell apart.
Ooh, ouch.
So when you go to math on like 12 cans of Coke, right, that's around what my basal metabolic rate is. And that was just cola that he was doing, right? And I love this guy, and I consider him a friend, but it's like he wrecked himself, right? And so it's like, well, but it became this habit. Well, I mean, how much of a difference does a can of Coke make? I guess if you're burning the calories, probably not much, but it wasn't. And then you go through with sleep cycles and blah, blah, blah. And then now we're doing impulsive eating and so on and so forth. So
yeah, as a gym owner, man, I run into it all the time. It's like people come in and I give them a tour and I'm like, these are the things that I can teach you to do. And that's like really the thing that I tell them. These are the things that I can teach you to do, that your body will be able to do. And then they turn to me and they go, well, I want to lose some weight. It's like that's all in the kitchen. Like this will help. But most of like people that come to me and they're like, I want to get fit, I want to get in shape, and I want to lose weight. And it always comes out like that. And I'm like, well, I can do half of that, you know, because I don't overpromise anyone anything. Like I can give you some solid advice, and you know, Ace, you know this. People know how to eat. They do. Most people know what to do. They just don't do it, and that's the truth.
Well, no,
And then like,
no,
and when
no,
and you fucking turn around to them, and you turn around and you tell them the shit that they already know, and they get mad, and they're like, "Fuck, nah, I'm not coming to this gym. They're telling me the same shit I already know." It's like, yeah, go do it. I'm not gonna solve your problem. You know, stop shoving stuff down your pie hole and have some temperance, have some self-control, and eat normal stuff. Don't drink your life away. You know, have some exercise, some stoic virtues like moderation. You know, yeah.
I
People know
want.
what to do most of the time.
Do you drink alcohol?
I don't.
Why and when did that start?
Two reasons. One is in my 30s, I was really big into Belgian ales. I loved the kind of like single fermentation ales, like the triple Carmelite and things like that. And I was standing in my living room drinking a really nice triple Carmelite, and all of a sudden my throat closed and I couldn't breathe. I don't know where. And I was like, what the heck? And I didn't I didn't know at the time that it was the beer I was drinking, but that I had developed an allergy to fermented alcohol. So like I fought it for years because I love whiskey, I love scotch, I love bourbon. I've got one of the Pappy Van Winkle bourbons before they burned down the freaking distillery in Kentucky. I still have that. I'm lucky, you know. So like yeah. So anyway, that happened. So for years, I started like finding beers that I could keep drinking, and the beers that I could keep drinking were manufactured by the German purity laws, so pilsners. So anything that was freaking uh, anything that was fancy or was going to be drank by some 20-something with a flannel and a beard on or something. I don't know, some IPA shit. Like I can't drink any of that stuff. Like any fancy to do beer. So I could for a while I could drink pilsners, and then eventually that went away. So that's why I stopped drinking. The other second reason is I'm 46 and my hangover lasts 3 days. So that like I get migraines that last 3 days if I smell gin or whatever. It just happens. So it really isn't by choice. I'm thankful. It doesn't like. I'm sad that it's gone, but it doesn't kill me not to drink anymore. But that was the process that I went through. I wouldn't wish it on anyone.
For me, I was always allowed to drink. I never saw I saw my dad, so he couldn't drive, but I never saw him stumbling around like a fool. And I mean, when I was 16 and got my license, I think the only reason he had me go and pick him up from the bar a couple times and called me for a ride was for no other reason than to just set the example of you don't need to drink and drive. And
Awesome.
it was never one of those things that I really saw, but I was always right from the time I was probably 10 years old. My twin brother and I, if we want to split a beer around Christmas or, you know, have a mixed drink, like the old man had used the half jigger. And I mean, it was never this forbidden thing.
Yeah.
And then I said with a jigger with that's what they're called. So when my friends would want to go and get pissed up, it was one of those things I just didn't understand. Right. And then my granddad, like my dad's dad, was a real prick when he drank. And I mean, before I was born, right? I never really saw that. And my mom's dad drank himself to the point he was a catatonic. So when I was young, there was this old man that we would go and visit. And if there was somebody that was my dad's age, right, I didn't call him Mr. Jones. I'd call him, Uncle Gary, right? And right, that's your get it, right? And if they were like older, you'd call them grandpa or grandma, and it's just like it was like a respect thing, right? So this old man we'd go and visit, and we'd call him Grandpa Bert. And he just kind of sat at this chair and stared at this TV, and I didn't really understand why any of this was happening. And I'm like, okay, well, whatever. And then it wasn't until he died that I realized that that was my mom's dad.
Wow.
I had no, that was my mom's dad. I don't remember the sound of his voice. And when I asked my dad about it, he said, well, do you remember when we would go to the cabin when you were a kid? And I was like, yeah, sure, lots, right? I was okay, well, there was this town called Turtleford, right? Turtleford, Saskatchewan, it's in northern Saskatchewan. He said we would go there and we'd stop outside this house and your mom would get out of the vehicle and we would wait in the car and she'd come back about 5 minutes later and we would leave. I said, yeah. She goes, well, she went and she would look through the window and see if her dad was drinking. And if he was drinking at the kitchen table, we never went in. I said, we never went in. No, we didn't. And so the neighbor eventually wound up finding him in front of an empty glass and empty bottle staring in the middle distance. And I was like, huh. And then when I was young, I worked as a dishwasher in restaurants. And I would find out that I just started to realize, like, all these problems that these people are having, whether it was dumping an entire paycheck into a VLT, or I think you guys call them slot machines, smoking crack, getting pregnant out of wedlock, whatever that looked like. All these problems kind of started with this person was drunk. All these bad decisions. So like, well, it costs money, and I'm broke as a joke because I'm young, and I just rather not do this. And then when I was living in Mexico, there was a certain amount that I had to drink because there's a cultural expectation. So I just drank the lightest beer that I could, and I have good avian genes, so I can handle my alcohol very well. And without even getting drunk, I just felt not good the next day. And I'm like, well, I didn't really want to have the lost productivity. And the conversations were trash. And I was like, I don't really see the benefit. The only benefit is if you are trying to speak another language and you're kind of trash at it, getting mildly drunk will really help. I can definitely speak. Like initially when I get down, there's a certain amount of just like doing it. And I'm sure I sound like a moron, but they all sound drunk like morons then too. So like nobody ever did that, right? And it's fine. But it's things where for me, I'm just not, it's a waste of my time.
Yeah.
And I don't enjoy doing, for me, a big part of it is from a martial arts standpoint. I don't enjoy feeling compromised at all. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, well now I'm just not in a good position. And like, I'm not also going to go get into the situation where it's like, well, I guess I got to go do a bit of schnee in order to go through and feel like I'm on the ball, right? So it's like got this like real cocktail of someone being a jackass, right? Combined with ability. That's a great idea.
That's like all those things that I was saying before. Like, I don't like anything that I don't like needing anything. Like, I don't like needing coffee. I like coffee, but I don't like needing it. I don't like needing ibuprofen if I'm sore. I don't like needing anything. And so like I that's one of those things that like I don't mind indulgences, but I sure as hell don't want to need an indulgence, and so that's kind of like, that's one of the things I try to pass on to my kids, my family, and just like don't be owned by anything, like. And if it's an indulgence, if it's something that is like special, don't do it all the time. Don't need it. Don't expect it. And I think that is, and I'm not telling you because I've mastered this. I haven't. But I believe in it. And that's something I really believe in, and I think people will live a better life in general if they can be their own masters and not be mastered by the world, by anything in it. Whether it be chemical, person, place, or thing.
I absolutely.
Hey, brother, I gotta bounce, man. I gotta take my kids to.
An hour ago.
What's that?
I thought you had to bounce half an hour ago and tell your wife I said.
I did. But man, this is great, dude. Like, I really enjoy talking to you. And like I said, being able to talk shop like this doesn't happen very often. I mean, for a guy my age and the stuff that I do, I work a lot and I don't really get to have these types of interactions with other professionals and kind of just talk shop and talk about the things that we're doing. And so I think it'd be super fun if we did it again in a couple months or a couple weeks. I'd be all for it.
I'd love that. I got a bunch of driving I got to do tomorrow, so I will give you a shout tomorrow.
All right, man.
It was a pleasure.
Hey.
For any of you that were late tuning into this, I will get it edited and up on YouTube, so it is easy to listen to while you're driving, because the playback on IG is trash. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Have a great